a humble hotel maid, uncovers a billionaire murder plot, thrusting her into a dangerous world of wealth and deceit where she must confront her own tragic past to save a life and find justice. Sophie Martinez's calloused hands gripped the handle of her mop, the scent of bleach filling her nostrils as she navigated the opulent hallways of the Grandeur Hotel. At 28, she'd spent a decade scrubbing floors and cleaning up after New York's elite, becoming as invisible to them as the very dust she swept away. But today, fate would thrust her into a spotlight she never sought, changing the course of her life forever. The plush carpet muffled her footsteps as she approached Suite 1201, home to Madison Wilson, wife of billionaire tech mogul Ethan Wilson. Sophie's brown eyes, usually downcast, darted up at the sound of raised voices from within. Her hand hesitated over the doorknob, heart racing as words filtered through the heavy oak door. "Ryan, we can't keep putting this off," Madison's voice hissed, tension palpable even through the barrier. "Ethan's trip to the Caymans next week is our chance. Once he's gone, all of this, the money, the power, it'll be ours." Sophie's breath caught in her throat. She leaned closer, ears straining to catch every word. A male voice, presumably Ryan's, responded with a nervous edge. "Maddie, are you sure about this? Murder it's not something we can take back." "Murder?" Sophie mouthed silently, eyes widening in shock. Madison's laugh was cold, devoid of any warmth. "Oh, please, don't get cold feet now. We've come too far. Ethan's death will look like an accident, a tragic yachting mishap. No one will suspect a thing." Sophie's mind raced, her heart pounding so loudly she feared the conspiring couple might hear it through the door. She'd always known the wealthy guests of the Grandeur had secrets, but murder, this was beyond anything she could have imagined. As the voices inside grew quieter, Sophie realized she'd been standing motionless for too long. Forcing herself to move, she quickly began mopping the hallway, her movements mechanical as her thoughts whirled. What should she do? Go to the police? But who would believe a mere maid over the word of a billionaire's wife? And Ethan? Should she warn him? The thought of approaching such a powerful man made her stomach churn with anxiety. As Sophie wrestled with her conscience, memories of her father, Thomas, flashed through her mind. He'd always taught her to stand up for what was right, no matter the cost. "Miha," he'd say, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "In this world, sometimes we're all that stands between good and evil. Never be afraid to be that stand." Thomas had died when Sophie was just 18, leaving her alone to navigate the harsh realities of life in New York City. His words, however, had stayed with her, a constant reminder of the values he'd instilled. Lost in thought, Sophie barely noticed as the door to Suite 1201 swung open. Madison Wilson emerged, her blonde hair perfectly coiffed, designer heels clicking on the marble floor. Behind her, a tall, dark-haired man, Ryan, Sophie presumed, followed closely. Madison's ice-blue eyes swept over Sophie dismissively before she turned to Ryan. "Remember, darling, discretion is key. We'll talk more later." As the couple strode towards the elevator, Sophie kept her head down, heart racing. She'd seen their faces now. There was no going back. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. Sophie moved from room to room, her actions automatic as her mind grappled with the weight of what she'd overheard. By the time she clocked out, the sun had long since set, the city lights twinkling through the windows of the employee locker room. Sophie changed out of her uniform with trembling hands, her co-worker Maria casting concerned glances in her direction. "Everything okay, Chica?" Maria asked, her warm brown eyes filled with worry. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Sophie managed a weak smile. "I'm fine, just tired. Long day, you know?" Maria nodded sympathetically. "I hear you. Get some rest, okay? Tomorrow's another day." If only she knew, Sophie thought as she bid Maria goodnight and stepped out into the cool evening air. The streets of New York bustled with its usual nighttime energy, But Sophie barely noticed the crowds as she made her way to the subway. Her mind replayed the overheard conversation on a loop, each repetition cementing her resolve. She couldn't stay silent. Ethan Wilson's life was in danger, and she was the only one who knew. The question was, how could she, a nobody, reach one of the most powerful men in the city? As the subway car rattled through the tunnels, Sophie formulated a plan. Tomorrow, she'd find a way to speak to Ethan. She had to warn him. Consequences be damned. Arriving at her tiny studio apartment in Queens, Sophie collapsed onto her worn sofa, exhaustion finally catching up with her. The room, barely large enough for a bed and a small kitchenette, had been her home for the past 5 years. It wasn't much, but it was hers. A far cry from the cardboard box she'd slept in during her first months in the city after her father's death. Sophie's gaze fell on the framed photo of her father on the nightstand. Thomas Martinez smiled back at her, his kind eyes seeming to offer encouragement even now. "What would you do, Papi?" she whispered, reaching out to touch the frame. "How do I make them believe me?" As if in answer, her father's voice echoed in her memory. "La verdad siempre sale a la luz, mija. The truth always comes to light." With renewed determination, Sophie began to plan. She'd need evidence, something more substantial than just her word against Madison's. But how? An idea struck her: the hotel's security cameras. If she could somehow access the footage from the hallway outside Suite 1201, she might be able to catch Madison and Ryan in the act of planning their sinister plot. It was a long shot. She knew accessing that footage would be risky, possibly illegal. But if it meant saving a life and preventing a murder, wasn't it worth the risk? As Sophie prepared for bed, her mind raced with possibilities and potential pitfalls. Tomorrow would be crucial. She'd have one chance to warn Ethan Wilson, and she couldn't afford to mess it up. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, Sophie felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She was just a maid, an invisible cog in the grand machine of the Grandeur Hotel. But now, she held a secret that could topple empires and save lives. Sleep eluded her as scenarios played out in her mind. What if Ethan didn't believe her? What if Madison somehow found out that Sophie knew? The possibilities were endless and terrifying. As the first light of dawn began to creep through her window, Sophie finally drifted into a fitful sleep. Her dreams were a chaotic mix of opulent hotel suites, sinister whispers, and her father's encouraging smile. When her alarm blared a few short hours later, Sophie jolted awake, her heart pounding. For a moment, she hoped it had all been a dream. The overheard conversation, the murder plot, all of it. But as the fog of sleep cleared, reality came rushing back. Today was the day. Today, she would step out of the shadows and into a world she barely understood, armed only with the truth and her own determination. As Sophie dressed for work, she caught her reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at her looked tired, scared, but there was a fire in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She was no longer just Sophie the maid. Today, she would become Sophie the protector, Sophie the truth teller. With a deep breath, she stepped out of her apartment and into the early morning bustle of New York City. The Grandeur Hotel awaited, and with it, a day that would change everything. Little did Sophie know that her decision to act would not only alter the course of Ethan Wilson's life, but would set in motion a chain of events that would unearth long-buried secrets, challenge powerful adversaries, and ultimately lead her on a journey of self-discovery and redemption. As she boarded the subway, Sophie clutched her bag tightly, the weight of her decision heavy on her shoulders. Inside, tucked safely away, was a small notebook where she jotted down everything she could remember from the conversation she'd overheard. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The subway car lurched forward, carrying Sophie towards a future she couldn't have imagined just 24 hours ago. As the city flashed by outside the windows, she steeled herself for what was to come. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, drawing curious glances from nearby passengers. "E for Papi, for justice, for what's right." The Grandeur Hotel loomed ahead, its gleaming facade a stark contrast to the turmoil Sophie felt inside. As she passed through the employee entrance, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into a new chapter of her life, one filled with danger, intrigue, and perhaps, just perhaps, a chance at the kind of life she'd always dreamed of but never dared to reach for. Little did Sophie know that her courage would soon catapult her into a world of wealth, power, and deceit, a world where her past and future would collide in ways she never could have imagined. The stage was set, the players were in place, and Sophie Martinez was about to become the unlikely heroine in a drama that would shake New York's elite to its very core. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Grandeur Hotel's opulent lobby, casting a golden glow on the marble floors. Sophie Martinez pushed her cleaning cart with practiced ease, her eyes darting nervously around the space. Today was no ordinary day. The weight of what she'd overheard yesterday pressed heavily on her conscience. As she maneuvered around a group of well-dressed businessmen, Sophie's mind raced. How could she warn Ethan Wilson about the plot against his life? The task seemed impossibly daunting. She was just a maid, invisible to the likes of billionaires and their glamorous wives. Yet she knew she had to try. Sophie's reverie was interrupted by a sharp voice. "Martinez, Suite 1201 needs attention now." It was Mrs. Hoffman, the head of housekeeping, her stern face set in its usual frown. Sophie's heart skipped a beat. Suite 1201, Madison Wilson's room. The very place where she'd overheard the murderous plot. "Yes, Mrs. Hoffman," she managed to reply, her voice steadier than she felt. As the elevator carried her up to the 12th floor, Sophie's palms grew sweaty. She gripped the handle of her cart tightly, trying to calm her racing heart. The doors opened with a soft ding, and she stepped out into the plush hallway. Suite 1201 loomed before her, an innocuous door hiding dark secrets. Sophie took a deep breath, reminding herself of her father's words. "La verdad siempre sale a la luz." The truth always comes to light. She knocked softly. "Housekeeping," she called out, her voice barely above a whisper. No answer. Sophie used her master key to enter the suite, pushing her cart inside. The room was a vision of luxury, all cream-colored surfaces and gleaming gold accents. But to Sophie, it now felt tainted by the sinister conversation she'd overheard. As she began her cleaning routine, Sophie's eyes darted around the room, searching for anything that might provide evidence of the murder plot. She knew she was taking a risk, but the thought of an innocent man losing his life spurred her on. Suddenly, voices outside the door made her freeze. She recognized them immediately, Madison Wilson and her lover, Ryan. "I told you not to come here," Madison hissed, her voice low but clear. "What if Ethan's people see you?" "Relax, Maddie," Ryan replied, his tone casual. "No one's paying attention to me. I'm just another guest in this overpriced hotel." Sophie's heart pounded so loudly she was sure they would hear it. She looked around frantically, searching for a place to hide. The closet was too obvious, the bathroom too far. In a split-second decision, she ducked behind the floor-length curtains, praying they wouldn't notice the cleaning cart. The door opened, and Sophie held her breath. "We need to finalize the details," Ryan said, his footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. "The Cayman trip is in 3 days. Everything needs to be perfect." Madison's heels clicked on the marble floor of the entryway. "Lower your voice," she snapped. "The walls have ears in this place." If only they knew how right she was, Sophie thought, her body tense behind the curtain. "Fine," Ryan conceded. But we need to talk about the money. Once Ethan's gone, how quickly can we access the accounts?" Madison let out a low, throaty laugh. "Oh, darling, you underestimate me. I've been planning this for years, within hours of the tragic accident. I'll have control of everything. Ethan's empire will be mine, ours." Sophie felt sick to her stomach. The casual way they discussed ending a man's life chilled her to the bone. "And you're sure it'll look like an accident?" Ryan pressed, a note of anxiety in his voice. "Of course," Madison replied. impatience coloring her tone. "The yacht will malfunction. Poor Ethan will fall overboard. By the time anyone realizes he's missing, it'll be too late. The sharks will take care of the rest." Sophie had to stifle a gasp. The coldness in Madison's voice was terrifying. "What about the staff on the yacht?" Ryan asked. "Taken care of," Madison said dismissively. "A little extra cash goes a long way. They'll see and say exactly what we need them to." There was a pause, and Sophie heard the clink of glass. Were they toasting their heinous plan? "To us," Madison purred, "and to the future that awaits us once Ethan is out of the picture." "To us," Ryan echoed, but Sophie detected a hint of hesitation in his voice. For what felt like an eternity, Sophie remained motionless behind the curtain, listening as Madison and Ryan discussed the finer points of their plan. Every detail was meticulously crafted, every contingency considered. It was clear that this was no spur-of-the-moment decision, but a long con that had been in the works for years. Finally, after what seemed like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, Sophie heard them preparing to leave. "Remember," Madison said, her voice low and intense, "not a word to anyone. The next time we meet will be to celebrate our success." "Of course," Ryan replied. "I'll see you in the Caymans." The door clicked shut, and Sophie let out a shaky breath. She waited a full minute before emerging from her hiding spot, her legs trembling from the strain of standing still for so long. Her mind was reeling from everything she'd heard. The plot was even more sinister than she'd initially thought. This wasn't just about murder, it was about a complete takeover of Ethan Wilson's life and legacy. Sophie looked at the cleaning cart, suddenly remembering her cover. She had to finish cleaning the room, had to maintain the illusion of normalcy. With trembling hands, she went through the motions of tidying up, all the while her mind racing with the weight of what she'd learned. As she changed the sheets on the king-sized bed, Sophie couldn't help but think about the woman who slept there, Madison Wilson, with her perfect blonde hair and designer clothes, who plotted murder between spa appointments and charity galas. How could someone so beautiful be so rotten inside? And then there was Ryan. Sophie hadn't gotten a good look at him, but his voice had betrayed a nervousness that Madison's lacked. Was he having second thoughts? Or was he just worried about getting caught? Sophie finished her cleaning in record time, desperate to get out of the room that now felt tainted by the evil plans hatched within its walls. As she pushed her cart out into the hallway, she nearly collided with a tall, distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit. "Oh, I'm so sorry, sir," she stammered, her eyes wide with shock as she recognized him from countless magazine covers and news reports. It was Ethan Wilson himself. Ethan smiled kindly, his blue eyes crinkling at the corners. "No harm done," he said, his voice warm and reassuring. "Are you all right? You look a bit pale." Sophie's mind raced. This was her chance, possibly her only chance, and to warn him. But how? How could she possibly explain what she'd heard without sounding crazy or getting herself fired? Or worse. "I'm fine, thank you, Mr. Wilson," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. I overheard something. Something I think you should know." Ethan's eyebrows rose slightly, curiosity replacing the concern in his expression. "Oh, what's that?" Sophie glanced nervously up and down the hallway. This was hardly the place for such a conversation. It's about your trip to the Cayman Islands," she said, her voice shaking. I think you might be in danger." Ethan's expression hardened, all traces of the friendly smile gone. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice low and intense. Before Sophie could respond, the elevator dinged, and out stepped Madison Wilson, her face a mask of surprise as she took in the scene before her, her husband talking to a mere maid. "Darling!" Madison called out, her voice sickly sweet. What's going on here?" Ethan turned to his wife, his expression unreadable. "Nothing, dear. Just a small misunderstanding with the cleaning staff." Sophie's heart sank. He didn't believe her. Or worse, he didn't want to believe her. Madison's icy blue eyes fixed on Sophie, a look of disdain barely concealed behind a polite smile. "Well, I'm sure it's nothing that can't be sorted out. Come along, Ethan. We have that lunch with the Vanderbilts, remember?" Ethan nodded, allowing himself to be led away by his wife. But as they walked towards the elevator, he glanced back at Sophie, a look of curiosity and something else, concern, in his eyes. Sophie stood rooted to the spot, her mind whirling. She had tried to warn him, but it hadn't been enough. What could she do now? As she pushed her cart back towards the service elevator, Sophie's resolve hardened. She couldn't give up. Ethan Wilson's life was at stake, and she was the only one who could save him. She would find a way to make him listen, to make him understand the danger he was in. But how? The question plagued her as she went about the rest of her day, mechanically cleaning rooms while her mind worked overtime. She needed proof, something concrete that Ethan couldn't ignore. As her shift came to an end, Sophie made a decision. She would have to take matters into her own hands. It was risky, potentially illegal, but she saw no other choice. That night, long after the other cleaning staff had gone home, Sophie snuck back into the hotel. Using her employee access card, she made her way to the security office. Her heart pounded in her chest as she slipped inside, praying that the night guard was on his usual coffee break. The room was empty, filled with the soft hum of computers and the glow of dozens of monitors showing feeds from around the hotel. Sophie's eyes scanned the screens frantically until she found what she was looking for, the feed from the hallway outside Suite 1201. With shaking hands, she navigated the system, rewinding the footage to earlier that day. There it was, Madison and Ryan entering the suite together. She fast-forwarded, watching as they left nearly half an hour later. Sophie pulled out her phone and began recording the security footage. It wasn't much, but it was a start, proof that Madison was meeting secretly with another man in her hotel room. As she finished recording, Sophie heard footsteps approaching. Panic seized her as she quickly exited the system and ducked behind a desk. The night guard entered, whistling tunelessly as he settled into his chair. Sophie's heart raced as she tried to figure out how to escape. She couldn't be caught here. It would ruin everything. Taking a deep breath, she steeled herself and then purposely knocked over a stack of files. The guard jumped up, startled. "Who's there?" he called out. Sophie stood up slowly, putting on her best embarrassed smile. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I was looking for my lost earring. I think it fell off while I was cleaning earlier, and I just can't sleep knowing it's lost somewhere in the hotel." The guard's face softened slightly, but suspicion still lingered in his eyes. "You shouldn't be in here, miss. This area is off limits to cleaning staff." I know, Sophie said, trying to sound contrite. "I just thought maybe someone had turned it in. I'll go now. I'm so sorry for the trouble." The guard escorted her out, giving her a stern warning about staying out of restricted areas. Sophie nodded meekly, her heart still pounding as she made her way out of the hotel. Once outside, she leaned against the cool brick wall, taking deep breaths of the night air. She had done it. She had evidence now, shaky as it was. But would it be enough? As Sophie made her way home, her mind was already formulating her next move. Tomorrow, she would find a way to speak to Ethan Wilson alone. She would show him the footage, tell him everything she had overheard, and she would pray that he would believe her. The subway ride home was a blur, Sophie's mind replaying the events of the day over and over. The overheard conversation, the near miss with Ethan, the risky nighttime excursion to the security office. It all felt surreal, like something out of a movie rather than her real life. As she entered her tiny apartment, Sophie was struck by how unchanged it all looked. Her life had been turned upside down in the span of 24 hours. Yet here was her shabby couch, her small kitchenette, her father's photo smiling at her from the nightstand, all exactly as she had left them this morning. She collapsed onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had been keeping her going all day finally wore off, leaving her feeling drained and overwhelmed. What had she gotten herself into? She was just a maid, for God's sake. Who was she to get involved in the affairs of billionaires and their murderous wives? For a moment, Sophie considered giving up, pretending she had never heard anything, never seen anything. But then her eyes fell on her father's photo, and she remembered his words. Sometimes we're all that stands between good and evil. Never be afraid to be that stand. Sophie took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. She may be just a maid, but she was also Thomas Martinez's daughter. And Thomas Martinez's daughter did not stand by while innocent people were murdered. With renewed determination, Sophie began to plan for tomorrow. She would need to be smart, careful, and above all, brave. The stakes were higher than she had ever faced before, but she was ready to rise to the challenge. As she finally drifted off to sleep, Sophie's last thought was of Ethan Wilson. Tomorrow, she would save his life. Tomorrow, she would become the hero her father had always believed she could be. Little did Sophie know that her actions were about to set in motion a chain of events that would not only change Ethan Wilson's life, but would also uncover long-buried secrets, challenge powerful adversaries, and ultimately lead her on a journey of self-discovery and redemption that she could never have imagined. The stage was set, the players were in place, and Sophie Martinez was about to step into a world of wealth, power, and danger that would test her courage, her integrity, and her heart in ways she never thought possible. The harsh buzz of Sophie's alarm clock jolted her awake, her heart racing as the events of the previous day came flooding back. For a moment, she lay in bed, the weight of her knowledge pressing down on her like a physical force. Today was the day she would confront Ethan Wilson and potentially change the course of his life and her own. As Sophie went through her morning routine, her movements were mechanical, her mind preoccupied with the task ahead. She caught a glimpse of herself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back at her. There was a determination in her eyes that hadn't been there before, a fire that burned with the intensity of her purpose. "You can do this," she whispered to her reflection, channeling her father's strength, for justice, for what's right. The subway ride to the Grandeur Hotel felt interminable. Sophie clutched her phone tightly, the recorded footage of Madison and Ryan's clandestine meeting burning a hole in her pocket. It wasn't much, but it was all she had, her only chance to make Ethan Wilson believe her wild story. As she entered the hotel through the staff entrance, Sophie's eyes darted nervously around, half expecting Madison or Ryan to jump out and confront her. But the morning bustle continued as usual, the hotel staff going about their duties, blissfully unaware of the drama unfolding in their midst. Sophie's hands trembled slightly as she donned her uniform and prepared her cleaning cart. She had to find a way to speak to Ethan alone, away from Madison's watchful eyes. But how? Fate, it seemed, was on her side. As Sophie exited the service elevator on the 12th floor, she nearly collided with none other than Ethan Wilson himself. "Oh, Mr. Wilson," she gasped, her heart leaping into her throat. "I'm so sorry. I didn't see you there." Ethan's kind blue eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled. "No harm done," he said, his voice warm and reassuring. "You're the maid from yesterday, aren't you? The one who tried to warn me about something?" Sophie's eyes widened in surprise. He remembered her. "Yes, sir," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She glanced nervously up and down the hallway, acutely aware of how exposed they were. "Mr. Wilson, I need to speak with you. It's urgent." Ethan's expression grew serious, sensing the gravity in her tone. "What's this about?" he asked, lowering his voice to match hers. Sophie took a deep breath, steeling herself. It was now or never. "It's about your wife, sir, and your upcoming trip to the Cayman Islands. You're in danger." Ethan's eyebrows shot up, a mix of surprise and skepticism crossing his face. For a moment, Sophie feared he would dismiss her outright, but then he nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. "All right," he said quietly. "Let's talk." "But not here." He led her to a small conference room at the end of the hall, closing the door behind them. Sophie's heart pounded in her chest as Ethan turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "Now," he said, his voice calm but firm, "tell me everything." And so Sophie did. The words tumbled out of her in a rush, her voice shaking as she recounted the conversation she'd overheard between Madison and Ryan. She told him about their plan to sabotage his yacht, about Madison's cold calculation of his death, about the empire she planned to inherit. As she spoke, Sophie watched Ethan's face carefully, searching for any sign of belief or dismissal. His expression remained neutral, but she could see the tension in his jaw, the slight narrowing of his eyes. When she finished, silence fell over the room. Sophie held her breath, waiting for Ethan's response. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and controlled. "That's quite a story." "Miss Martinez," Sophie supplied. "Sophie Martinez," Ethan nodded. "Miss Martinez, I appreciate your concern, but you must understand how this sounds. My wife plotting to kill me. It's unbelievable, I know," Sophie interrupted, her desperation lending her courage. But sir, I have proof." She pulled out her phone with trembling hands, pulling up the security footage she'd recorded. "This is from yesterday," she explained as she pressed play. "It shows your wife meeting with Ryan in her suite." Ethan's eyes widened as he watched the video, his composure slipping for the first time. Sophie saw a flicker of doubt cross his face, quickly replaced by a mask of calm. But she had seen it, a crack in his certainty, a seed of belief. "This is concerning," Ethan admitted, his voice tight, "but it's hardly proof of a murder plot. They could be discussing anything." Sophie felt her heart sink. He still didn't believe her. Not fully. She had to make him understand the gravity of the situation. Drawing on every ounce of courage she possessed, she looked Ethan directly in the eye. "Mr. Wilson," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "I know how this must sound. I'm just a maid, a nobody. Why would you believe me over your wife? But I swear to you on my father's grave that every word I've told you is true. Your life is in danger. Please, you have to believe me." Something in her earnest plea seemed to reach Ethan. He studied her face intently, as if searching for any sign of deception. What he saw there must have convinced him, because he let out a long sigh, his shoulders sagging slightly. "All right, Miss Martinez," he said quietly. "Let's say I believe you. What do you suggest I do?" Relief washed over Sophie like a tidal wave. He believed her, or at least he was willing to consider the possibility. Now came the hard part. What to do next? "Cancel your trip to the Caymans," she said firmly. "That's where they're planning to do it. And don't confront your wife. Not yet. We need more proof, something concrete that can't be denied." Ethan nodded slowly, his mind clearly racing. "This is a lot to process," he admitted. "I need time to think, to investigate on my own. But Miss Martinez, I want you to know that I appreciate what you've done. It must have taken a great deal of courage to come to me with this." Sophie felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. For the first time since overhearing Madison's plot, she felt like she had done the right thing. "Thank you for listening, Mr. Wilson," she said softly. "I know it can't be easy to hear something like this about someone you love." A shadow passed over Ethan's face at her words, a flicker of pain that he quickly masked. "Love," he repeated, his voice barely audible. "Yes, well, thank you again, Miss Martinez. I'll be in touch." As Sophie left the conference room, her legs felt weak with relief and residual adrenaline. She had done it. She had warned Ethan Wilson. Now, all she could do was hope that he would heed her warning and take steps to protect himself. The rest of Sophie's shift passed in a blur. She went through the motions of cleaning rooms, her mind constantly replaying her conversation with Ethan. Had she said enough? Should she have pushed harder for him to take immediate action? As she was finishing up her last room of the day, a notification pinged on her phone. It was an email from an address she didn't recognize. With trembling fingers, she opened it. Miss Martinez, I've considered what you told me. While I'm still processing the implications, I want you to know that I'm taking your warning seriously. I've cancelled my trip to the Caymans and am conducting my own discreet investigation. Your bravery in coming forward has not gone unnoticed. As a token of my appreciation and to ensure your continued safety, I've arranged for you to be moved to a more secure apartment. The address and details are attached. Please move in as soon as possible. I'll be in touch soon. Until then, be careful and trust no one. E.W. Sophie stared at her phone in disbelief. Ethan had not only believed her, but had taken immediate action. And now he was offering her protection. It was more than she could have hoped for. As she made her way home that evening, Sophie felt a mix of relief and trepidation. She had set something in motion, something big. There was no going back now. In her tiny apartment, Sophie began to pack her meager belongings. As she carefully wrapped her father's photo, she could almost hear his voice. "You did good, Mija. You stood up for what's right." Sophie smiled through the tears that had begun to form in her eyes. "I did, Papi," she whispered, "and I'm not done yet." As night fell over New York City, Sophie Martinez prepared to step into a new chapter of her life. She didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but she knew one thing for certain. She was ready to face them head-on. Little did she know that her act of courage had set in motion a chain of events that would not only change Ethan Wilson's life, but would also uncover long-buried secrets, challenge powerful adversaries, and ultimately lead her on a journey of self-discovery and redemption that she could never have imagined. The stage was set, the players were in motion, and Sophie Martinez was about to be thrust into a world of wealth, power, and danger that would test her courage, her integrity, and her heart in ways she never thought possible. But for now, as she zipped up her suitcase and took one last look around her old apartment, Sophie felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the bustling streets of New York as Sophie Martinez made her way to the Grandeur Hotel. Her heart raced with anticipation and a touch of fear. Today was the day she would try to warn Ethan Wilson about the danger he faced, and the thought filled her with both determination and dread. As she pushed through the revolving doors of the hotel's grand entrance, Sophie's eyes darted nervously around the opulent lobby. Marble columns stretched towards a ceiling adorned with intricate gold leaf designs, and crystal chandeliers cast a soft glow over the plush carpets. It was a world so far removed from her own that she felt like an intruder, despite having worked here for years. Sophie made her way to the service elevator, her mind racing as she tried to formulate a plan. How could she approach Ethan Wilson without arousing suspicion? And more importantly, how could she make him believe her wild tale of betrayal and murder? As the elevator doors slid open on the 12th floor, Sophie's breath caught in her throat. There, just a few feet away, stood Ethan Wilson himself. He was engaged in conversation with one of the hotel's managers, his tall frame impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than Sophie made in a year. For a moment, Sophie hesitated. This was her chance, but fear threatened to overwhelm her. What if he dismissed her as a crazy, attention-seeking maid? What if Madison found out about her interference? But then she remembered the cold, calculating tone of Madison's voice as she plotted her husband's demise. Sophie couldn't let an innocent man die, not when she had the power to prevent it. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out of the elevator and approached the two men. "Excuse me, Mr. Wilson," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan turned, his piercing blue eyes landing on Sophie with a mix of curiosity and mild irritation. "Yes? Can I help you?" The manager looked at Sophie disapprovingly, clearly annoyed at the interruption. "I'm sorry, Mr. Wilson. I'll have her removed." "No, it's all right," Ethan said, holding up a hand. There was something in Sophie's expression that gave him pause. "What is it?" Sophie's heart pounded so loudly she was sure they could hear it. "Sir, I need to speak with you. It's urgent. It's about your wife." Ethan's eyebrows shot up, and the manager's face reddened with indignation. "Now see here," he began, but Ethan cut him off. "It's fine, Robert, give us a moment, please." The manager looked as if he wanted to protest, but a stern look from Ethan sent him scurrying away. Ethan turned back to Sophie, his expression guarded. "All right, you have my attention. What about my wife?" Sophie glanced around nervously, acutely aware of how exposed they were in the hallway. "Not here, sir, please. Is there somewhere we can talk privately?" For a long moment, Ethan studied Sophie's face, as if trying to gauge her sincerity. Finally, he nodded. "Follow me." He led her to a small conference room at the end of the hall, closing the door behind them. Sophie's palms were sweating, and she wiped them nervously on her uniform as Ethan turned to face her. "Now," he said, his voice low and intense. "What's this about my wife?" Sophie took a deep breath, steeling herself. It was now or never. "Mr. Wilson, I overheard something yesterday. Something terrible. Your wife, she's planning to kill you." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and shocking. Ethan's face remained impassive, but Sophie saw a flicker of something, doubt, fear, in his eyes. "That's a very serious accusation," he said carefully. "What exactly did you hear?" And so, Sophie told him everything. She recounted the conversation she'd overheard between Madison and Ryan, their cold-blooded plotting, the details of their plan to sabotage his yacht during the upcoming Cayman Islands trip. As she spoke, she watched Ethan's face carefully, searching for any sign that he believed her. When she finished, silence fell over the room. Ethan's expression was unreadable, his eyes focused on some distant point. Sophie held her breath, waiting for his response. Finally, he spoke. "Do you have any proof of this?" His voice was calm, controlled, but Sophie could hear the underlying tension. I recorded some security footage," she admitted, pulling out her phone with trembling hands. "It shows your wife meeting with Ryan in her suite yesterday." She played the video for Ethan, watching his face carefully as he viewed the damning evidence. His jaw tightened, a muscle twitching in his cheek, but otherwise he remained stoic. When the video ended, Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Sophie's heart raced, fear and hope warring within her. Would he believe her? Or would he dismiss her claims, leaving himself vulnerable to Madison's murderous plot? "Why are you telling me this?" Ethan asked suddenly, his piercing gaze locking onto Sophie's face. "You're risking a lot by coming to me." "Why?" Sophie swallowed hard, thinking of her father and the values he'd instilled in her. "Because it's the right thing to do, sir. I couldn't stand by and let someone be murdered. Not if I could prevent it." Something in her words seemed to resonate with Ethan. His expression softened slightly, and he nodded slowly. "I believe you," he said quietly, the words sending a wave of relief through Sophie. "Or at least, I believe that you believe what you're saying is true. You have to cancel your trip," Sophie urged, emboldened by his acceptance. "It's not safe, and please don't confront your wife yet. We need more proof, something concrete that can't be denied." Ethan nodded again, his mind clearly racing. "You're right. I need time to investigate and to verify your claims. But Miss Martinez," Sophie supplied. "Sophie Martinez. Miss Martinez," Ethan continued, "I want you to know that I appreciate what you've done. It must have taken a great deal of courage to come to me with this." Sophie felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. For the first time since overhearing Madison's plot, she felt like she had done the right thing. "Thank you for listening, Mr. Wilson," she said softly. "And I know it can't be easy to hear something like this about someone you love." A shadow passed over Ethan's face at her words, a flicker of pain that he quickly masked. "Love," he repeated, his voice barely audible. "Yes, well, thank you again, Miss Martinez. I'll be in touch." As Sophie left the conference room, her legs felt weak with relief and residual adrenaline. She had done it. She had warned Ethan Wilson. Now, all she could do was hope that he would heed her warning and take steps to protect himself. The rest of Sophie's shift passed in a blur. She went through the motions of cleaning rooms, her mind constantly replaying her conversation with Ethan. Had she said enough? Should she have pushed harder for him to take immediate action? As she was finishing up her last room of the day, a notification pinged on her phone. It was an email from an address she didn't recognize. With trembling fingers, she opened it. Miss Martinez, I've considered what you told me. While I'm still processing the implications, I want you to know that I'm taking your warning seriously. I've cancelled my trip to the Caymans and am conducting my own discreet investigation. Your bravery in coming forward has not gone unnoticed. As a token of my appreciation, and to ensure your continued safety, I've arranged for you to be moved to a more secure apartment. The address and details are attached. Please move in as soon as possible. I'll be in touch soon. Until then, be careful and trust no one. E.W. Sophie stared at her phone in disbelief. Ethan had not only believed her, but had taken immediate action. And now he was offering her protection. It was more than she could have hoped for. As she made her way home that evening, Sophie felt a mix of relief and trepidation. She had set something in motion, something big. There was no going back now. In her tiny apartment, Sophie began to pack her meager belongings. As she carefully wrapped her father's photo, she could almost hear his voice. You did good, Miha. You stood up for what's right. Sophie smiled through the tears that had begun to form in her eyes. I did, Papi, she whispered, and I'm not done yet. As night fell over New York City, Sophie Martinez prepared to step into a new chapter of her life. She didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but she knew one thing for certain: she was ready to face them head-on. The morning after her conversation with Sophie, Ethan Wilson sat in his home office, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. The plush leather chair that usually brought him comfort now felt confining as he struggled to reconcile the image of his wife with the cold-blooded killer Sophie had described. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the Manhattan skyline beyond, but Ethan barely noticed the view. His eyes were fixed on the framed photo on his desk, a picture of him and Madison on their wedding day, both smiling radiantly at the camera. How could the woman in that photo, the woman he had loved for over a decade, be plotting his murder? Ethan ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair, feeling the weight of his decision pressing down on him. He had cancelled his trip to the Caymans, citing an unexpected business emergency. Madison had seemed disappointed, but not overly suspicious. Now, as he sat in the quiet of his office, doubt began to creep in. What if Sophie was mistaken? Or worse, what if she had some ulterior motive for fabricating such an outrageous story? The security footage she had shown him was concerning, certainly, but it was hardly conclusive proof of a murder plot. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called out, straightening in his chair. Madison entered, looking every bit the picture of elegance, in a tailored white blouse and pencil skirt. Her blonde hair was swept up in a chic updo, and her blue eyes sparkled as she smiled at him. "Darling, I was thinking we could have lunch together since you're not leaving for the Caymans today," she said, her voice warm and inviting. "That new French bistro on Fifth Avenue, perhaps?" Ethan studied his wife's face, searching for any sign of deception or malice. But all he saw was the woman he had fallen in love with years ago. Could this really be the same person who was plotting his demise? "That sounds lovely," he heard himself say, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. "Let me just wrap up a few things here, and I'll meet you downstairs in 15 minutes. Madison beamed at him, crossing the room to plant a soft kiss on his cheek. "Perfect. I'll go freshen up." As the door closed behind her, Ethan let out a long, shaky breath. He felt like he was caught in some surreal nightmare, unable to distinguish truth from fiction. Part of him wanted to confront Madison right then and there, to demand answers and put an end to this agonizing uncertainty. But Sophie's warning echoed in his mind. "Don't confront her yet. We need more proof." Ethan's gaze fell on his laptop, and a thought struck him. He quickly opened his email and composed a message to his head of security, Andrew Thompson. "Andrew, I need you to conduct a discreet investigation into my wife's recent activities and communications. Pay particular attention to her interactions with a man named Ryan. This is of the utmost importance and must be kept absolutely confidential. Also, I want you to look into a hotel maid named Sophie Martinez. Background check, recent activities, anything you can find. Report back to me as soon as you have any information. Ethan. He hit send, feeling a mixture of guilt and resolve. If Madison was innocent, the investigation would prove it. And if she wasn't, well, he needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Ethan stood up, straightening his tie as he prepared to meet Madison for lunch. As he walked towards the door, he caught sight of his reflection in the window. The man staring back at him looked tired, conflicted, and undeniably afraid. "Get it together, Wilson," he muttered to himself. "You've faced tougher challenges than this." But even as he said the words, Ethan knew that nothing in his life had prepared him for the possibility that the woman he loved might be plotting his murder. As he made his way downstairs, Ethan's mind drifted to Sophie Martinez. The young maid had risked everything to warn him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her story than met the eye. He made a mental note to look into her background more thoroughly. If she was telling the truth, she might need protection, and if she wasn't, well, he needed to know that too. Madison was waiting for him in the foyer, her smile bright and seemingly genuine. "Ready, darling?" she asked, linking her arm through his. Ethan nodded, forcing a smile onto his face. "Let's go," he said, leading her towards the elevator. As they descended to the lobby of their luxury apartment building, Ethan couldn't help but feel like he was standing on the edge of a precipice. One wrong move, and everything he had built, everything he believed in, could come crashing down around him. But for now, he had to play the part of the loving, unsuspecting husband. He had to pretend that his world hadn't been turned upside down by the words of a hotel maid. He had to act as if the woman beside him, the woman he had shared his life with for years, wasn't potentially plotting his demise. As they stepped out into the bright New York sunshine, Ethan steeled himself for what lay ahead. He didn't know what the truth was yet, but he was determined to find out, and when he did, he would be ready to face whatever consequences came with it. Little did Ethan know that his decision to investigate would set in motion a chain of events that would not only uncover long-buried secrets, but also challenge everything he thought he knew about his life, his marriage, and himself. As they walked arm in arm down the bustling street, Ethan and Madison looked every bit the perfect power couple. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing, one that threatened to tear apart not just their marriage, but the very foundations of the life they had built together. Meanwhile, across town, Sophie Martinez was settling into her new apartment, her mind racing with questions and fears. Had she done the right thing by warning Ethan? Would he truly investigate, or would he dismiss her claims as the ramblings of a desperate maid? As she unpacked her few belongings, Sophie's gaze fell on the framed photo of her father. She picked it up, running her fingers over the familiar face. "What would you do, Papi?" she whispered. "How do I know if I'm doing the right thing?" The photo, of course, remained silent, but as Sophie stared at her father's kind eyes and warm smile, she felt a sense of calm wash over her. She had done what she believed was right, what her father would have wanted her to do. Now all she could do was wait and hope that the truth would come to light before it was too late. As the day wore on, the lives of Sophie Martinez and Ethan Wilson continued on their separate paths. But the thread that now connected them, a thread woven from secrets, suspicions, and the potential for both great danger and great redemption, was growing stronger by the minute. In the coming days and weeks, that thread would be tested, stretched to its limits, and perhaps even broken. But for now, as the sun began to set over the New York skyline, both Sophie and Ethan found themselves standing on the threshold of a journey that would change their lives forever. The stage was set, the players were in motion, and the stakes could not have been higher. As night fell over the city, the true nature of Madison's plans, the extent of Ethan's resolve, and the role Sophie would play in unraveling it all remained to be seen. But one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The sun had barely risen over the Manhattan skyline when Ethan Wilson made his way to his home office, the weight of Sophie's revelation heavy on his shoulders. He hadn't slept well, his mind racing with possibilities and doubts. As he settled into his leather chair, he took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he was about to do. With trembling fingers, he picked up his phone and dialed his assistant's number. "Sarah," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I need you to cancel my trip to the Cayman Islands. Something's come up." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Of course, Mr. Wilson," Sarah replied, her tone professional but tinged with surprise. "May I ask what reason I should give for the cancellation?" Ethan hesitated, his mind working quickly. "Tell them there's been an unexpected development with the merger. I need to stay in New York to handle it personally." "Understood, sir. I'll take care of it right away." As Ethan hung up, he leaned back in his chair, his eyes falling on the framed photo of Madison on his desk. Her smile, once a source of comfort, now seemed to mock him. Was it possible that the woman he had loved for so long was capable of such betrayal? A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called out, quickly composing himself. Madison entered, looking radiant in a silk robe, her blonde hair cascading over her shoulders. "Darling, I thought I heard you on the phone. Is everything all right?" Ethan forced a smile, his heart racing. "Just a small hiccup with the merger," he lied smoothly. "I'm afraid I'll have to postpone the Cayman trip." A flicker of something, disappointment, annoyance, crossed Madison's face. But it was gone so quickly, Ethan wasn't sure he hadn't imagined it. "Oh, that's a shame," she said, her voice filled with sympathy. "I was so looking forward to our time together." She crossed the room and perched on the edge of his desk, her hand reaching out to caress his cheek. "But I understand. Your work is important." Ethan leaned into her touch, his emotions a confusing mix of love, suspicion, and fear. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'll make it up to you, I promise." Madison smiled, leaning in to kiss him softly. "I know you will. How about we have dinner at Le Bernardin tonight to make up for the cancelled trip?" "That sounds perfect," Ethan replied, hoping his voice didn't betray the turmoil he felt inside. As Madison left the room, Ethan let out a shaky breath. He had bought himself some time, but now what? He needed proof, one way or the other. He couldn't go on suspecting his wife of plotting his murder without concrete evidence. With renewed determination, Ethan turned to his computer. He opened a secure browser and began researching private investigators. If Madison was indeed planning something, he needed someone discreet and thorough to uncover the truth. After an hour of careful consideration, Ethan settled on a firm with an impeccable reputation for discretion and results. He sent a coded email requesting an urgent meeting, his pulse quickening as he hit send. As he waited for a response, Ethan's thoughts turned to Sophie Martinez. The young maid had risked everything to warn him. He owed it to her to take her claims seriously, but he also needed to ensure her safety. If Madison discovered that Sophie had spoken to him, Ethan shuddered at the thought. He quickly composed another email, this time to his head of security. "Andrew, I need you to arrange protection for a hotel employee named Sophie Martinez, discreetly. She's to be moved to a safe location immediately. Use whatever resources necessary, but keep this off the books. Also, I need a complete background check on her. I want to know everything there is to know about Sophie Martinez. This is top priority. Report directly to me, and only to me, Ethan." As Ethan sent the email, he felt a mix of relief and apprehension. He was taking action, but every step felt like he was walking further into a maze of secrets and lies. Who could he trust? Was he paranoid, or was his life really in danger? The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and phone calls. Ethan went through the motions, his mind constantly returning to the bombshell Sophie had dropped on him. By the time evening rolled around, he was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. As he prepared for dinner with Madison, Ethan caught sight of himself in the mirror. The man staring back at him looked tired, wary, and undeniably afraid. He straightened his tie, took a deep breath, and headed downstairs to meet his wife. Madison was waiting for him in the foyer, stunning in a black cocktail dress that hugged her curves. "Ready, darling?" she asked. Her smile bright and seemingly genuine. Ethan nodded, offering her his arm. "You look beautiful," he said, and he meant it. Despite everything, the sight of her still took his breath away. As they made their way to the restaurant, Ethan found himself studying Madison's every move, every expression. Was that a flicker of guilt in her eyes when she mentioned the cancelled trip? Or was he seeing what he wanted to see, his mind playing tricks on him in light of Sophie's accusations? Dinner at Le Bernardin was as exquisite as always, the food and wine impeccable. Madison chatted animatedly about her charity work and upcoming social events, while Ethan did his best to appear engaged and carefree. As they enjoyed their dessert, Madison reached across the table to take Ethan's hand. "I'm so glad we did this," she said, her blue eyes sparkling in the candlelight. "With your busy schedule, it feels like we hardly get any time together anymore." Ethan squeezed her hand, pushing down the wave of doubt and suspicion that threatened to overwhelm him. "I know, sweetheart, I'm sorry about that. I'll try to make more time for us." Madison's smile widened. "That's all I want," she said softly. "Just you and me like it used to be." As they left the restaurant, arm in arm, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he was living in two realities. In one, he was happily married to a beautiful, loving woman. In the other, that same woman was plotting his demise. Which reality was true? And how far was he willing to go to find out? Back at their penthouse, as Madison prepared for bed, Ethan retreated to his office once more. He checked his email, his heart racing when he saw a response from the private investigation firm. They had agreed to meet with him tomorrow morning. As he closed his laptop, Ethan's gaze fell on the photo of Madison once more. He picked it up, studying the smiling face of the woman he had promised to love and cherish till death do them part. "Who are you really?" he whispered to the photo. "And what are you planning?" With a heavy sigh, Ethan replaced the photo and headed to bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new information. For now, all he could do was try to sleep, all the while wondering if the woman lying next to him was his loving wife or his would-be murderer. As Ethan drifted off into an uneasy sleep, across town, Sophie Martinez lay awake in her new apartment, her mind racing with fears and doubts of her own. Had she done the right thing by warning Ethan? Would he believe her? And what would happen if Madison discovered what she had done? Sophie's gaze fell on the framed photo of her father on her nightstand. She reached out, touching the glass gently. "Give me strength, Papi," she whispered. "I'm going to need it." As the night deepened, both Ethan and Sophie found themselves standing on the precipice of a journey that would change their lives forever. The truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered, but at what cost? And were they ready for the consequences that would come with it? Only time would tell. For now, they could only wait, watch, and hope that they had made the right choices. The game was afoot, and the stakes could not have been higher. The morning sun cast long shadows across the polished marble floor of the Grandeur Hotel's lobby as Ethan Wilson strode purposefully through the revolving doors. His eyes scanned the bustling space, searching for the familiar face of Sophie Martinez. He had spent a restless night pondering her warning, torn between disbelief and a growing sense of unease. As he approached the front desk, Ethan spotted Sophie pushing her cleaning cart towards the service elevator. Her shoulders were hunched, and dark circles under her eyes betrayed a night as sleepless as his own. "Miss Martinez," he called out, his voice low but urgent. Sophie turned, her eyes widening in surprise and a flicker of fear as she recognized him. "Mr. Wilson," she stammered, glancing nervously around the lobby. Is everything all right?" Ethan gestured towards a quiet corner near the potted palms. "Can we talk for a moment?" Nodding hesitantly, Sophie followed him, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her uniform. As they reached the relative privacy of the corner, Ethan turned to face her, his expression a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. "I wanted to thank you," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "for your warning yesterday. I know it must have taken a great deal of courage to come to me with this information." Relief flooded Sophie's face, quickly replaced by concern. "You believe me, then?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I'm taking your warning seriously," he said finally. "I've cancelled my trip to the Caymans, and I'm conducting my own investigation into the matter." Sophie's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank God," she breathed. "I was so worried you wouldn't believe me, that you'd dismiss me as some crazy maid looking for attention." A ghost of a smile crossed Ethan's face. "The thought did cross my mind," he admitted. "But there was something in your eyes, Miss Martinez, a sincerity that I couldn't ignore." He paused, his expression growing serious once more. "But I need you to understand the gravity of this situation. If what you've told me is true, we're dealing with something incredibly dangerous. And if it's not..." He let the implication hang in the air between them. Sophie straightened, meeting his gaze with a determination that surprised him. "I understand, Mr. Wilson. And I stand by every word I told you. I heard your wife and that man, Ryan, planning to kill you. I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent and something happened to you." Ethan studied her face, searching for any sign of deception, but all he saw was earnest concern and a resolve that belied her youth and station. It struck him then how little he knew about this woman who had potentially saved his life. "Tell me, Miss Martinez," he said softly, "why do you work here? You seem different from the other maids, more educated, perhaps." A shadow passed over Sophie's face, and for a moment Ethan thought she might not answer. But then she spoke, her voice tinged with a sadness that tugged at his heart. "I had dreams once," she said, her gaze distant. "I was studying to be a lawyer, following in my father's footsteps. But then he died, and with him, any chance I had of finishing my education. This job, it's not what I wanted, but it's what I needed to survive." Ethan felt a surge of compassion for the young woman before him. He had built his empire from the ground up, but he had never faced the kind of hardship Sophie had endured. Her resilience in the face of adversity only made her warning more credible in his eyes. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said gently, "and I'm grateful that despite everything, you still chose to do the right thing by warning me." Sophie's eyes met his, a fierce determination burning in their depths. "My father always taught me that we have a responsibility to stand up for what's right, no matter the cost. I couldn't let you walk into danger, not when I could prevent it." Ethan nodded, a newfound respect for Sophie blooming in his chest. "Your father sounds like he was a wise man. You honor his memory with your actions." A small smile tugged at Sophie's lips, the first Ethan had seen from her. "Thank you, Mr. Wilson. That means more than you know." Glancing at his watch, Ethan realized he had already stayed longer than he'd intended. "I should go," he said, straightening his tie. "But before I do, I want you to know that I've arranged for your protection. You'll be moved to a secure location today. My head of security will be in touch with the details." Sophie's eyes widened in surprise. "Protection? But I can't afford..." Ethan held up a hand, silencing her protests. "Consider it a small token of my gratitude. Your safety is paramount, Miss Martinez, especially if..." He trailed off, the unspoken threat hanging between them. Understanding dawned in Sophie's eyes, followed quickly by fear. "Oh, you think your wife might suspect I've talked to you?" "I don't know," Ethan admitted, "but I'm not willing to take that risk, not with your life." Sophie nodded, swallowing hard. "Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Ethan assured her. "Just stay safe. And if you remember anything else, anything at all, don't hesitate to contact me." He handed her a small business card with a private number scrawled on the back. "This line is secure. Use it if you need to reach me." Sophie took the card, holding it as if it were a lifeline. "I will. And Mr. Wilson, please be careful. I meant what I said yesterday. Your wife, she's dangerous." Ethan's jaw tightened, the reality of his situation crashing over him once more. "I will," he promised. "Take care, Miss Martinez." As he walked away, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that his life had irrevocably changed. The woman he had loved and trusted for years might be plotting his murder, while a maid he barely knew had risked everything to save him. The world had tilted on its axis, and Ethan Wilson was struggling to find his footing in this new reality. But one thing was certain: he owed Sophie Martinez a debt he could never fully repay, and he was determined to uncover the truth, no matter where it led him. As Ethan exited the hotel, his mind was already racing with plans. He needed to dig deeper, to find concrete evidence of Madison's betrayal, or proof of her innocence. Either way, he couldn't rest until he knew the truth. Little did he know that his quest for answers would lead him down a path darker and more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. The game was afoot, and the stakes were higher than ever. Back in the hotel lobby, Sophie watched Ethan's retreating form, a mixture of relief and trepidation swirling in her chest. She had done what she believed was right, but the consequences of her actions were only beginning to unfold. As she returned to her cleaning cart, Sophie couldn't shake the feeling that she had set in motion events that would change not just Ethan's life, but her own as well. The truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered, and Sophie Martinez, once an invisible maid, now found herself at the center of a storm that threatened to upend the lives of some of New York's most powerful people. The stage was set, the players were in motion, and the drama was about to unfold in ways none of them could have predicted. For Sophie and Ethan, the journey ahead would test their courage, their integrity, and their faith in humanity. But for now, all they could do was brace themselves for the challenges that lay ahead, hoping that in the end, truth and justice would prevail. The sun had barely crested the horizon when Sophie's phone buzzed with an incoming message. Bleary-eyed from another restless night, she fumbled for the device, her heart racing as she saw it was from an unknown number. "Ms. Martinez, a car will pick you up in 1 hour. Pack essentials for a few days." Your boy Sophie sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. Ethan Wilson was making good on his promise to protect her. A mixture of relief and anxiety washed over her as she hurried to get ready, her mind racing with possibilities. As she threw some clothes and toiletries into a small suitcase, Sophie's gaze fell on the framed photo of her father. She picked it up, running her fingers over the familiar face. "What have I gotten myself into, puppy?" she whispered. After a moment's hesitation, she carefully wrapped the frame in a sweater and tucked it into her bag. Whatever lay ahead, she needed her father's strength with her. Precisely an hour later, a sleek black car with tinted windows pulled up outside her apartment building. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a crisp suit stepped out, his eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. "Ms. Martinez?" he asked as Sophie approached, her suitcase in hand. At her nod, he opened the car door for her. "Mr. Wilson sent me. Please get in." The drive through the city was silent, the privacy screen between Sophie and the driver firmly in place. She watched the familiar streets of her neighborhood give way to the towering skyscrapers of Manhattan, then to the lush greenery of Central Park. Finally, the car pulled up to a gleaming high-rise on the Upper East Side. Sophie's eyes widened as she stepped out of the car. She had cleaned rooms in luxury hotels, but she had never imagined herself staying in a place like this. The driver led her through a marble-floored lobby to a private elevator, using a key card to access it. As they ascended, Sophie's stomach fluttered with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. What exactly had Ethan Wilson arranged for her? The elevator opened directly into a spacious apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a breathtaking view of the city. Sophie stepped out hesitantly, her eyes darting around the luxurious space. "Mr. Wilson asked me to give you this," the driver said, handing her an envelope before retreating to the elevator. "If you need anything, there's a secure phone on the kitchen counter." The number for Mr. Wilson's security team is programmed in. Before Sophie could thank him, the elevator doors closed, leaving her alone in the opulent apartment. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope. Ms. Martinez, your bravery in coming forward has not gone unnoticed or unappreciated. This apartment is yours for as long as you need it. Consider it a small token of my gratitude for potentially saving my life. I understand that this situation has put you in a difficult and potentially dangerous position. Please know that my security team is monitoring the building and your safety is their top priority. I've taken the liberty of arranging for you to take a leave of absence from your job at the hotel. Your position will be waiting for you when this is all over, should you choose to return. In the meantime, I encourage you to use this time to rest and reflect. There are some books in the study that you might find interesting, law texts that once belonged to my father. Perhaps they'll be of use to you in rekindling your own legal aspirations. I'll be in touch soon with any developments. Until then, stay safe and know that your actions may have saved more than just my life. They may have uncovered a truth that needed to be brought to light. With deepest gratitude, Ethan Wilson. Sophie read the letter twice, her mind struggling to process the magnitude of Ethan's gesture. She wandered through the apartment in a daze, running her fingers over the plush furniture, the sleek kitchen appliances, the soft bedding in the master suite. In the study, she found the books Ethan had mentioned. Rows of legal tomes lined the shelves, their spines cracked and worn from use. Sophie pulled one out, the familiar scent of old paper bringing tears to her eyes as she remembered studying similar books with her father. As the reality of her situation began to sink in, Sophie felt a wave of emotions wash over her. Gratitude for Ethan's generosity, fear of what Madison might do if she discovered Sophie's role in foiling her plans, and a glimmer of hope that perhaps her life wasn't destined to be one of endless drudgery after all. She made her way to the windows, gazing out at the city sprawled before her. Somewhere out there, Ethan Wilson was fighting to uncover the truth about his wife's betrayal, and here she was, Sophie Martinez, once an invisible maid, now thrust into the center of a drama that could shake the foundations of New York's elite. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Sophie took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. She had made her choice when she decided to warn Ethan. Now, she would see it through to the end, whatever that might be. She turned away from the window and walked purposefully to the study. Pulling out one of the law books, she settled into a comfortable armchair. If she was going to be part of this unfolding drama, she might as well use the time to reconnect with her old dreams. As Sophie immersed herself in the familiar legal jargon, she couldn't help but feel that this gift from Ethan was more than just a safe house. It was a second chance, an opportunity to reclaim the path she had been forced to abandon. Meanwhile, across the city, Ethan Wilson sat in his home office, staring at the framed photo of Madison on his desk. The woman he had loved for so long, the woman he had built a life with, now a stranger whose true motives remained a mystery. He picked up his phone, dialing a number he had memorized but never used. "It's Wilson," he said when the line connected. "I need your services. It's about my wife." As Ethan began to outline the situation to the private investigator, he felt a mix of dread and determination. Whatever the truth might be, he was committed to uncovering it. He owed it to himself, to his company, and to the brave young woman who had risked everything to warn him. The game was afoot, and Ethan Wilson was prepared to see it through to the bitter end. Little did he know that the path ahead would lead him to secrets darker and more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. As the day wore on, both Sophie and Ethan found themselves at the beginning of a journey that would test their courage, their integrity, and their faith in humanity. The truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered, and neither of them could have predicted the twists and turns that lay ahead, or the profound ways in which their lives would become intertwined in the pursuit of justice. The stage was set, the players were in motion, and the drama was about to unfold in ways that would shake the very foundations of their world. For Sophie Martinez and Ethan Wilson, the real challenge was just beginning. The shrill ring of Sophie's new, secure phone cut through the quiet of the luxurious apartment, startling her from her deep dive into a legal textbook. She had spent the past few days immersed in the law books Ethan had provided, rediscovering her passion for justice and legal intricacies. With a mix of anticipation and trepidation, she answered the call. "Hello," she said, her voice betraying a hint of nervousness. "Ms. Martinez," a gruff, unfamiliar voice responded. "This is Detective James Martinez. No relation, I'm afraid," he added with a dry chuckle. "I need to speak with you regarding some recent developments involving Mr. Ethan Wilson." Sophie's heart raced. Had something happened to Ethan? Had Madison discovered her involvement? "Is everything all right, Detective?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "That remains to be seen," Detective Martinez replied cryptically. "I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Can you meet me at the 21st Precinct in an hour?" Sophie hesitated, remembering Ethan's warnings about her safety. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Mr. Wilson arranged for my protection, and I understand your concerns, Ms. Martinez." The detective interrupted, his tone softening slightly. "But I assure you, this is a matter of utmost importance. Mr. Wilson's security team has been notified and will escort you to the precinct. You'll be safe." Still uneasy but seeing no alternative, Sophie agreed. "All right, Detective, I'll be there in an hour." As she prepared to leave, Sophie's mind whirled with possibilities. What could have happened that required police involvement? And why did they need to speak with her specifically? True to the detective's word, a member of Ethan's security team was waiting for her when she exited the apartment. The drive to the precinct was tense and silent, Sophie's anxiety growing with each passing minute. The 21st Precinct was a hive of activity, officers and civilians bustling about with purposeful energy. Sophie was led to a small, windowless room where Detective Martinez was waiting, a thick file folder on the table in front of him. "Miss Martinez, thank you for coming," he said, gesturing for her to take a seat. "I apologize for the cloak and dagger routine, but given the sensitive nature of this case, we can't be too careful." Sophie sat down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "What's this about, Detective? Has something happened to Mr. Wilson?" Martinez leaned forward, his weathered face serious. "Mr. Wilson is fine, for now, but we've uncovered some information that suggests the threat against him may be more complicated than we initially thought." He paused, studying Sophie's face intently. "What can you tell me about your father, Thomas Martinez?" The question caught Sophie off guard. What did her father have to do with any of this? "My father," she repeated, confusion evident in her voice. He passed away when I was 18. He was a lawyer, worked mostly pro bono cases for people who couldn't afford representation. But I don't understand what this has to do with Mr. Wilson or his wife's plot." Detective Martinez nodded, as if confirming something to himself. "Ms. Martinez, what I'm about to tell you may come as a shock. We've recently uncovered evidence suggesting that your father's death may not have been the accident it appeared to be." Sophie felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. "What?" she whispered, her mind reeling. "But how? Why?" The detective opened the file in front of him, pulling out a photograph. It showed a younger version of Sophie's father shaking hands with a man she didn't recognize. "This photo was taken about a year before your father died. The man he's with is Richard Callahan, Madison Wilson's father." Sophie stared at the photo, struggling to process this new information. "I don't understand. My father never mentioned knowing anyone named Callahan." "We believe your father was working on a case involving Callahan's company," Martinez explained. "A case that, if it had gone to trial, could have exposed some very damaging information about the Callahan family and their business practices." The implications of what the detective was saying began to dawn on Sophie. "Are you suggesting that the Callahans had something to do with my father's death?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Martinez's expression was grim. "We're still piecing together the evidence, but yes, that's what we suspect. and we believe that Madison Wilson, née Callahan, may have been involved. Sophie felt as if the ground was shifting beneath her feet. The plot against Ethan, her father's death, Madison's family, it was all connected in ways she could never have imagined. "But why tell me this now?" she asked, struggling to keep her emotions in check. "Why, after all these years?" The detective leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving Sophie's face. "Because, Miss Martinez, you've inadvertently stumbled into something much bigger than a simple murder plot. By warning Ethan Wilson, you may have disrupted plans that have been in motion for years." He paused, allowing Sophie a moment to absorb this information before continuing. "We believe Madison's plan to kill Ethan wasn't just about money or power. It was about protecting family secrets, secrets that your father was close to exposing before his death." Sophie's mind was racing, trying to connect the dots. "So, when I overheard Madison and Ryan planning to kill Ethan, you may have saved not just his life, but potentially exposed a web of corruption and criminal activity that spans decades." Martinez finished for her. The weight of this revelation settled heavily on Sophie's shoulders. Her simple act of doing what she believed was right had set in motion events that were far beyond anything she could have imagined. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice small but determined. Detective Martinez closed the file, his expression softening slightly. "Now, Miss Martinez, we need your help. Your connection to both your father and Ethan Wilson puts you in a unique position. We believe you may be the key to unraveling this whole conspiracy." Sophie took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. She thought of her father, of his unwavering commitment to justice, and of Ethan Wilson's kindness and trust in her. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, her voice stronger now. As Detective Martinez began to outline their plan, Sophie felt a mixture of fear and determination coursing through her. She was no longer just a maid who had overheard a dangerous conversation. She was now a crucial player in a high-stakes game of justice and retribution. The path ahead would be dangerous, filled with risks and uncertainties. But as Sophie listened to the detective, she knew that she had to see this through, for her father, for Ethan, and for the truth that had been buried for far too long. Little did Sophie know that her decision to help would lead her down a path fraught with danger, testing her courage and resolve in ways she could never have anticipated. The game was afoot, and Sophie Martinez was about to become a key player in a drama that would shake the foundations of New York's elite and potentially bring justice for a crime long thought forgotten. As she left the precinct that day, escorted once again by Ethan's security team, Sophie felt the weight of her newfound knowledge and responsibility. The simple life she had known was gone, replaced by a complex web of secrets, lies, and danger. But with this new challenge came an opportunity, a chance to honor her father's memory, to fight for justice, and to become the person she had always dreamed of being. The sun was setting over the city as Sophie returned to her temporary sanctuary in the luxury apartment. As she gazed out at the glittering skyline, she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The stage was set, the players were in motion, and Sophie Martinez was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead in her quest for truth and justice. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sophie's luxury apartment, casting long shadows across the polished hardwood floors. She sat at the kitchen island, nursing a cup of coffee, her mind still reeling from the revelations Detective Martinez had shared with her the day before. The connection between her father's death and Madison Wilson's family felt like a cruel twist of fate. Sophie's thoughts wandered to the framed photo of her father that now sat on the nightstand in her temporary bedroom. She could almost hear his voice, urging her to pursue the truth, no matter the cost. A soft ping from her secure phone jolted Sophie from her reverie. It was a message from Ethan Wilson. "Mrs. Martinez, I hope this message finds you well. I need to speak with you urgently. Can you meet me at the Central Park Zoo at 2 p.m.? My security team will escort you. W." Sophie's heart raced as she read the message. What could be so urgent that Ethan needed to meet her in person? And why the zoo? of all places. Despite her apprehension, she knew she had to go. She owed Ethan that much. And perhaps he had information that could help unravel the mystery surrounding her father's death. At precisely 1:30 p.m., a knock on her door signaled the arrival of Ethan's security team. The drive to Central Park was tense, with Sophie's mind conjuring up various scenarios of what Ethan might want to discuss. The zoo was bustling with families and tourists, providing the perfect cover for a clandestine meeting. Sophie spotted Ethan near the sea lion exhibit, his tall frame and salt and pepper hair unmistakable even in casual clothes. As she approached, Ethan's face broke into a warm but tired smile. "Ms. Martinez, thank you for coming," he said, his voice low. "I apologize for the cloak and dagger routine, but I needed to speak with you away from prying eyes and ears." Sophie nodded, her own voice barely above a whisper. "Of course, Mr. Wilson. Is everything all right?" Ethan's smile faded, replaced by a grim expression. "Not exactly," he admitted. "Walk with me." As they strolled through the zoo, Ethan began to speak, his words carefully measured. "I've been conducting my own investigation since you warned me about Madison's plot. What I've uncovered, it's more complicated and far-reaching than I could have imagined." Sophie's breath caught in her throat. "Mr. Wilson, there's something I need to tell you as well. Yesterday, I met with a detective who—" "Detective Martinez," Ethan interrupted, raising an eyebrow. Sophie nodded, surprised. "Yes? How did you know?" "He contacted me as well," Ethan explained. "It seems we're all caught in the same web of deceit and corruption, but there's more to it than even the police know." They paused near the penguin exhibit. The playful antics of the birds, a stark contrast to the serious conversation at hand. Ethan turned to face Sophie, his blue eyes intense. "Ms. Martinez, Sophie, what I'm about to tell you may be difficult to hear, but I believe you deserve to know the truth. It concerns your father." Sophie's heart pounded in her chest. "My father? What about him?" Ethan took a deep breath before continuing. "My private investigator uncovered some documents that suggest your father was working on a case involving Madison's family company, Callahan Industries. He had evidence of widespread fraud and potentially illegal activities." Sophie nodded slowly, her mind racing. "Detective Martinez mentioned something similar. He said my father's death might not have been an accident." A shadow passed over Ethan's face. "I'm afraid it's worse than that. The documents my investigator found, they implicate Madison directly in your father's death." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Sophie processed this information. She gripped the railing of the exhibit, her knuckles turning white. "Madison killed my father," she whispered, her voice trembling. Ethan placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Sophie. I can't imagine how difficult this must be to hear, but there's more. The plot against me. It wasn't just about money or power. It was about preventing the truth about your father's murder from coming to light." Sophie's mind whirled with questions. But why now, after all these years?" "Because," Ethan explained, his voice tight with barely contained anger, "I recently began looking into some discrepancies in Callahan Industries. Financial records that date back to the time of your father's death. Madison must have realized that I was getting close to uncovering the truth." The pieces were starting to fall into place in Sophie's mind. Her simple act of warning Ethan had inadvertently exposed a conspiracy that spanned decades. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice small but determined. Ethan's expression hardened. "We fight back. We expose the truth, no matter the cost. But Sophie, I need you to understand the danger we're facing. Madison and her family are powerful, with connections that run deep. This won't be easy, and it certainly won't be safe." Sophie thought of her father, of his unwavering commitment to justice. She thought of the years she'd spent struggling to make ends meet, never knowing that her father's killers were living lives of luxury and power. A steely resolve settled over her. "I'm in," she said, her voice stronger now. "Whatever it takes, Mr. Wilson." I want justice for my father, and I want to help you bring down the people who tried to kill you." Ethan nodded, a glimmer of respect and admiration in his eyes. "I was hoping you'd say that, but please, call me Ethan. I think we're well past formalities at this point." As they continued their walk through the zoo, Ethan outlined his plan. They would work with Detective Martinez, but also conduct their own parallel investigation. Ethan's resources and Sophie's personal connection to the case would be crucial in uncovering the truth. "There's one more thing," Ethan said as they neared the exit. "I've arranged for you to have access to some of my company's resources, legal databases, research tools, even some of our in-house counsel if you need it. I remember you mentioning you were studying law before everything happened. I thought this might help you get back on track." Sophie felt a lump form in her throat. "Ethan, I don't know what to say. Thank you for everything." Ethan smiled, a genuine warmth in his eyes. "You saved my life, Sophie, and now you're risking everything to help me uncover the truth. It's the least I can do." As they parted ways, each escorted by their respective security teams, Sophie felt a mix of emotions washing over her. Grief for her father, anger at Madison and her family, determination to see justice served, and an overwhelming sense of purpose that she hadn't felt in years. The sun was setting as Sophie returned to her apartment, casting a golden glow over the city. As she gazed out at the skyline, she knew that her life had irrevocably changed. She was no longer just Sophie Martinez, the maid who had overheard a dangerous conversation. She was now a key player in a high-stakes game of justice and retribution. Sophie walked to the bedroom and picked up the photo of her father. "I'll make you proud, Papi," she whispered, tracing his familiar features with her finger. "I'll finish what you started." As night fell over New York City, Sophie Martinez prepared herself for the challenges that lay ahead. The path would be dangerous, filled with powerful enemies and unexpected obstacles. But she was ready to face them head-on, armed with the truth and a determination to see justice served. Little did Sophie know that her journey was just beginning. The revelations of betrayal she had uncovered were merely the tip of the iceberg. As she and Ethan delved deeper into the conspiracy, they would uncover secrets that would shake the foundations of New York's elite and test their resolve in ways they could never have imagined. The stage was set, the players were in motion, and Sophie Martinez was about to embark on the most important mission of her life. The fight for truth and justice had begun, and there was no turning back. The following morning, Sophie woke with a renewed sense of purpose. The weight of the revelations from the previous day still pressed heavily on her mind, but it was now accompanied by a fierce determination to uncover the truth and seek justice for her father. She made her way to the study, where Ethan's law books lined the shelves. With a cup of coffee in hand, Sophie settled into the plush leather chair and began to pore over the legal texts, her mind sharp and focused. She was no longer just reading out of interest or to pass the time. She was arming herself with knowledge for the battle ahead. As the morning wore on, Sophie's secure phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. "Sophie, I've arranged for you to meet with someone who might be able to help us. Her name is Abigail Thornton, and she was your father's legal assistant years ago. She's agreed to talk to us. Meet me at the Gramercy Tavern at 1 p.m. Ethan." Sophie's heart raced as she read the message. Someone who had worked with her father, who might have insights into the case he was working on before his death. It felt like a crucial piece of the puzzle was finally within reach. At precisely 12:45 p.m., Sophie arrived at the Gramercy Tavern, her nerves on edge but her resolve unwavering. Ethan was already there, seated at a secluded table in the back. Beside him sat an elegant woman in her early 60s. Her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, her eyes sharp and intelligent behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Sophie," Ethan greeted her warmly, standing as she approached. "This is Abigail Thornton. Abigail, meet Sophie Martinez." Abigail's eyes widened as she took in Sophie's appearance. "My goodness," she breathed, "you look just like Thomas." "It's like seeing a ghost." Sophie felt a lump form in her throat at the mention of her father. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Thornton," she managed to say, taking a seat at the table. "Please, call me Abigail," the older woman insisted, her voice kind but tinged with sadness. "And I've been waiting for this day for a long time, though I never thought it would come under these circumstances." As they ordered their meals, Ethan quietly explained to Abigail what they had uncovered so far. Sophie watched the older woman's face carefully, noting the flickers of pain and anger that crossed her features as Ethan spoke of Thomas Martinez's murder and the Callahan family's involvement. When Ethan finished, Abigail took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly on the table. "I always knew there was more to Thomas's death than met the eye," she said softly. "He was too careful, too meticulous to have died in a simple car accident. But I never had any proof, and without it, I couldn't pursue my suspicions." Sophie leaned forward, her voice urgent. "Abigail, can you tell us about the case my father was working on? The one involving Callahan Industries?" Abigail nodded, her eyes taking on a distant look as she cast her mind back. "It was a complex case," she began. "Thomas had been approached by a whistleblower from within Callahan Industries. The man had evidence of widespread fraud, money laundering, even connections to organized crime. Thomas was building a case that would have brought down the entire Callahan empire. Do you remember the whistleblower's name?" Ethan asked, his voice low and intense. Abigail shook her head. Thomas was careful to protect his identity. He only ever referred to him as the source. But I do remember that Thomas was particularly interested in a series of offshore accounts that the source had uncovered. Accounts that were being used to funnel millions of dollars to some very unsavory characters. Sophie's mind raced as she processed this information. "And you think this is why they killed my father?" Abigail reached out, placing a comforting hand over Sophie's. "I'm certain of it," she said, her voice filled with a mixture of sorrow and anger. "Thomas was getting too close to the truth. He was a threat to everything the Callahans had built." "But why didn't you come forward with this information before?" Ethan asked, his brow furrowed. Abigail's expression darkened. "I tried," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "A few months after Thomas died, I went to the police with my suspicions. But the detective I spoke to dismissed me outright, said I was grieving and looking for someone to blame. Later, I found out that the detective had connections to the Callahan family. That's when I realized how deep this conspiracy ran." Sophie felt a chill run down her spine. The reach of the Callahans seemed to extend far beyond what they had initially imagined. "Abigail," Sophie said, her voice trembling slightly, "is there anything else you can tell us? Anything that might help us prove what the Callahans did?" The older woman was quiet for a moment, her eyes distant as if searching her memories. Then, suddenly, she straightened, a look of realization crossing her face. "There might be something," she said slowly. "Thomas had a safe deposit box at First National Bank. He never told me what was in it, but he made sure I knew about its existence. Said if anything ever happened to him, I should make sure you got the contents when you were old enough." Sophie's heart raced. Could the key to unraveling this entire conspiracy be sitting in a bank vault all these years? Ethan leaned forward, his expression intense. "Do you have access to this safe deposit box?" Abigail shook her head. "No, but I know the bank and the box number. Thomas made sure of that. He always said knowledge was power, and he wanted to make sure the right knowledge ended up in the right hands if something happened to him." As they finished their meal, plans were made. Ethan would use his connections to expedite access to the safe deposit box. Sophie, armed with Abigail's information and her own determination, would continue digging into her father's old case files. Before they parted ways, Abigail pulled Sophie into a tight embrace. Your father would be so proud of you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "He always said you had his spirit, his drive for justice. Now I see he was right." As Sophie watched Abigail's taxi disappear into the bustling New York traffic, she felt a mix of emotions washing over her: grief for the father she had lost, anger at those who had taken him from her, and a burning determination to see justice served. Back in her apartment, Sophie threw herself into her research with renewed vigor. She pored over legal documents, financial records, and news articles from the time of her father's death, looking for any connection to the Callahan family or their associates. As night fell over the city, Sophie stood by the window, gazing out at the glittering skyline. She thought of her father, of the risks he had taken in pursuit of the truth. She thought of Ethan, whose life hung in the balance as they unraveled this complex web of deceit. And she thought of Madison Wilson, the woman at the center of it all, whose actions had set in motion a chain of events that would change all their lives forever. Sophie knew that the path ahead would be dangerous. The Callahans and their allies would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. But as she stood there, the weight of her father's legacy and the trust Ethan had placed in her resting on her shoulders, Sophie Martinez made a silent vow. She would see this through to the end, no matter the cost. She would uncover the truth, expose the corruption, and bring those responsible for her father's death to justice. The game was far from over, and Sophie was ready to play her part. Little did she know that the contents of her father's safe deposit box would lead her down a path more treacherous and revealing than she could have ever imagined. The stage was set for the next act in this high-stakes drama, and Sophie Martinez was about to step into the spotlight. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the bustling streets of New York as Sophie Martinez made her way to First National Bank. Her heart raced with anticipation and a touch of fear. Today was the day they would finally access her father's safe deposit box, potentially uncovering the key to the entire conspiracy. Ethan Wilson was already waiting for her outside the bank, his tall frame cutting an imposing figure in his tailored suit. His face broke into a warm smile as he saw Sophie approach. "Good morning, Sophie," he greeted her, his voice low. "Are you ready for this?" Sophie nodded, squaring her shoulders. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. Together they entered the bank, the cool, air-conditioned interior a stark contrast to the humid summer day outside. Ethan approached the front desk, explaining their situation to the teller. After a few moments of verification, they were led to a private room where the safe deposit boxes were kept. The bank manager, a portly man named Mr. Harrison, greeted them with a practiced smile. "Mr. Wilson, Ms. Martinez," he said, nodding to each of them. "I understand you're here to access box number 1542. "That's correct," Ethan confirmed, his voice steady and authoritative. Mr. Harrison nodded, turning to Sophie. "Ms. Martinez, as the daughter of the late Mr. Thomas Martinez, you'll need to provide identification and sign some paperwork before we can grant you access." Sophie's hands trembled slightly as she handed over her ID and signed the necessary forms. Each second felt like an eternity, the weight of anticipation pressing down on her. Finally, Mr. Harrison led them to the vault. The heavy door swung open with a soft hiss, revealing rows upon rows of metal boxes. Sophie's eyes scanned the numbers until they landed on 1542. "Here we are," Mr. Harrison said, inserting a key into the lock. "I'll give you some privacy. Please ring the bell when you're finished." As the bank manager's footsteps faded away, Sophie and Ethan exchanged a look of nervous excitement. This was it, the moment of truth. With a deep breath, Sophie pulled open the drawer. Inside was a single manila envelope, thick with contents. Her father's neat handwriting adorned the front. "For Sophie, when the time is right." Sophie's hands shook as she picked up the envelope. It felt heavy, laden with secrets long buried. She looked at Ethan, who nodded encouragingly. "Go ahead," he said softly. "Whatever's in there, we'll face it together." Slowly, carefully, Sophie opened the envelope. Inside, she found a stack of documents, a small USB drive, and a handwritten letter. Her breath caught in her throat as she recognized her father's handwriting. "My dearest Sophie," the letter began, "if you're reading this, then something has happened to me. I pray that you're safe and that you've grown into the strong, compassionate woman I always knew you would become. What I'm about to tell you may be difficult to hear, but you deserve to know the truth." Sophie's eyes filled with tears as she read her father's words. He detailed the case he had been working on, the corruption he had uncovered within Callahan Industries. He wrote of offshore accounts, of money laundering schemes that reached the highest levels of government and business. "The USB drive contains all the evidence I've gathered," the letter continued. "Financial records, emails, even recorded conversations. It's everything needed to bring down the Callahan empire. But Sophie, my brave girl, you must be careful. These people are dangerous. They will stop at nothing to keep their secrets buried." As Sophie finished reading, she looked up at Ethan, her eyes wide with shock and determination. "Ethan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "this is it. This is everything we need." Ethan nodded, his expression grave. "We need to get this somewhere safe," he said, glancing towards the vault door. "We can't risk the Callahans finding out we have this information," Sophie agreed, quickly gathering the documents and USB drive. As they prepared to leave, a commotion outside the vault caught their attention. Raised voices, the sound of running feet. Ethan's expression hardened. "Something's wrong," he muttered, moving to stand protectively in front of Sophie. Suddenly, the vault door burst open. Two men in dark suits entered, their hands reaching ominously into their jackets. "Mr. Wilson, Ms. Martinez," one of them said, his voice cold and threatening. "I'm afraid we're going to need you to hand over that envelope." Sophie clutched the documents to her chest, her heart pounding. Ethan stepped forward, his voice calm but steely. "I don't know who you are," he said, "but you have no authority here. Leave now, or I'll call security." The man smiled, a chilling expression devoid of warmth. "I'm afraid you don't understand the situation, Mr. Wilson. We're not asking." As the men advanced, Sophie's mind raced. They couldn't let these documents fall into the wrong hands. Everything her father had fought for, everything they had uncovered, it all hung in the balance. In a split-second decision, Sophie did the only thing she could think of. She shoved the USB drive into her mouth, swallowing hard. The men lunged forward, but Ethan was quicker. He grabbed a nearby fire extinguisher, unleashing a cloud of white powder that filled the vault. "Run!" he shouted to Sophie, grabbing her hand and pulling her towards the exit. They burst out of the vault, coughing and disoriented. Alarms blared as they raced through the bank, confused customers and employees staring in shock. Outside, Ethan's security team was waiting. They quickly ushered Sophie and Ethan into a waiting car, speeding away from the scene. As they caught their breath in the back of the car, Sophie turned to Ethan, her eyes wide with fear and adrenaline. "What just happened?" she gasped. Ethan's expression was grim. "The Callahans," he said. "They must have been monitoring the bank. They knew we were coming." Sophie nodded, her hand going to her throat where she could still feel the USB drive. "I swallowed the drive," she said. "The documents, I think I dropped them in the vault." Ethan's eyes widened in surprise. Then he let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Quick thinking," he said. "We'll need to get that drive back as soon as possible, but at least it's safe for now." As the car weaved through the busy New York streets, Sophie's mind raced. They had the evidence, or at least part of it. But now the Callahans knew they were onto them. The game had changed, and the stakes were higher than ever. "What do we do now?" Sophie asked, her voice small but determined. Ethan's expression hardened, a look of fierce resolve in his eyes. "And now," he said, "we fight back. We use what we have, we gather more evidence, and we bring the Callahans down. For your father, for justice, for all the people they've hurt." Sophie nodded, feeling a surge of determination. She thought of her father, of the risks he had taken to uncover the truth. She thought of Abigail, who had kept this secret for so long, and she thought of Ethan, whose life was still in danger. As the city sped by outside the car windows, Sophie Martinez knew that her life had irrevocably changed. She was no longer just a maid who had overheard a dangerous conversation. She was now a key player in a high-stakes game of justice and retribution. The path ahead would be dangerous, filled with powerful enemies and unexpected obstacles. But Sophie was ready to face them head-on, armed with the truth and a determination to see justice served. Little did she know that the contents of that USB drive would lead her down a path more treacherous and revealing than she could have ever imagined. The stage was set for the next act in this high-stakes drama, and Sophie Martinez was stepping into the spotlight, ready to play her part in exposing the truth and bringing down the corrupt empire that had taken her father from her. The game was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. The sleek black car wound its way through the crowded streets of New York, its occupants still reeling from the events at the bank. Sophie sat in stunned silence, her hand unconsciously touching her throat where she had swallowed the USB drive. Beside her, Ethan was on the phone, speaking in hushed, urgent tones to someone she assumed was part of his security team. As they pulled up to a nondescript building in a quiet part of town, Ethan ended his call and turned to Sophie. "We're going to a safe house," he explained, his voice tense but controlled. "We need to regroup and figure out our next move." Sophie nodded, her mind still racing. "Ethan," she said softly, "I'm sorry about the documents. I should have—" Ethan held up a hand, cutting her off. "You did what you had to do," he assured her. Swallowing that drive was quick thinking. "We still have the most important piece of evidence." They were ushered into the building by Ethan's security team, taking a service elevator to a top-floor apartment. As they entered, Sophie was struck by the contrast between this place and the luxury apartment Ethan had provided for her. This space was sparse, functional, clearly designed for situations just like this. "We need to get that drive out of you as soon as possible," Ethan said, already moving towards a communication setup in the corner of the room. "I'm calling in a doctor I trust. In the meantime, we need to start planning our next move." Over the next few hours, as they waited for the doctor to arrive, Ethan and Sophie began to piece together what they knew. They pored over the notes Sophie had taken from her father's letter, trying to connect the dots between the Callahan family, Madison's plot against Ethan, and the larger conspiracy at play. "It's all connected," Sophie mused, her brow furrowed in concentration. "The offshore accounts my father mentioned, the money laundering, even Madison's plan to kill you. It's all part of a bigger picture." Ethan nodded, his expression grim. "The question is, how do we prove it? We need hard evidence, something that can't be dismissed or covered up." As they talked, a plan began to form. The USB drive would hopefully provide them with names, dates, and account numbers. But they needed more. They needed irrefutable proof of the Callahans' crimes. "We need to get into Madison's personal files," Ethan said, pacing the room. "She's meticulous, keeps records of everything. If we can access her computer or her private safe, we might find the smoking gun we need." Sophie's eyes widened as she realized what Ethan was suggesting. "You want to break into your own house?" Ethan's laugh was humorless. "Ironic, isn't it? But yes, that's exactly what I'm proposing. Madison thinks I'm out of town on business. We have a window of opportunity, but it's small." As they began to hash out the details of their plan, the doctor arrived. The process of retrieving the USB drive was uncomfortable, but mercifully quick. Soon, Sophie held the small device in her hand, marveling at how something so small could contain such explosive information. "We should look at what's on here before we do anything else," Sophie suggested. "It might change our plan." Ethan agreed, and they huddled around a secure laptop, hearts pounding as they inserted the drive. What they found exceeded their wildest expectations. Thomas Martinez had been thorough in his investigation, documenting years of financial fraud, bribery, and even evidence linking the Callahans to several mysterious deaths. "My God," Ethan breathed, his face pale as he scrolled through the files. "This goes deeper than we thought. Government officials, judges, even some of my own board members, they're all implicated." Sophie felt a mix of pride in her father's work and horror at the scope of the corruption they were uncovering. "This is why they killed him," she said softly, tears pricking at her eyes. He was close to exposing all of this. As they continued to examine the files, a new sense of urgency filled the room. They had the evidence they needed to bring down the Callahans, but they also knew that this information made them bigger targets than ever. "We need to move fast," Ethan said, his voice filled with determination. "The longer we wait, the more time they have to cover their tracks or come after us." They spent the next several hours fine-tuning their plan. Ethan would return home, ostensibly from his business trip. He would distract Madison while Sophie, disguised as a member of the cleaning staff, would sneak into the house and access Madison's personal computer and safe. "It's risky," Ethan admitted, running a hand through his hair. "If Madison suspects anything, or if you're caught." Sophie squared her shoulders, a fierce determination in her eyes. "I'll be careful," she promised, "and it's worth the risk. We need to finish what my father started." As night fell over the city, final preparations were made. Ethan's security team provided Sophie with a disguise and the necessary tools to bypass Madison's security measures. They went over the plan again and again, accounting for every possible scenario. Before they parted ways, Ethan pulled Sophie aside. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "You've already risked so much. I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to walk away now." Sophie thought of her father, of the sacrifices he had made in pursuit of the truth. She thought of all the people who had been hurt by the Callahans, greed and corruption. Her resolve hardened. "I'm sure," she said firmly. "We're in this together, Ethan, until the end." Ethan nodded, a mix of admiration and worry in his eyes. "All right then, let's bring them down." As Sophie left the safe house, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination, she knew that the next 24 hours would change everything. The fate of her father's legacy, Ethan's life, and the pursuit of justice all hung in the balance. The game was reaching its climax, and Sophie Martinez was ready to play her part. As she disappeared into the night, blending seamlessly into the bustling city streets, she silently vowed to see this through to the end, no matter the cost. Little did she know that the events about to unfold would test her courage, her ingenuity, and her loyalty in ways she could never have imagined. The final act of this high-stakes drama was about to begin, and Sophie was stepping onto center stage, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The early morning mist clung to the manicured lawns of the Wilson estate as Sophie, disguised in a nondescript cleaning uniform, approached the imposing gates. Her heart raced beneath the crisp fabric, a mixture of fear and determination coursing through her veins. This was it, the moment that could make or break their entire investigation. As she neared the security checkpoint, Sophie took a deep breath, channeling the confidence she'd seen in the hotel's most seasoned staff. "Morning," she said, flashing the fake ID Ethan's team had procured for her. "I'm with the cleaning service. Here for the usual Tuesday deep clean." The guard barely glanced at her ID before waving her through, his attention more focused on his steaming cup of coffee than on Sophie. She sent a silent prayer of thanks for human complacency as she made her way up the winding driveway. Inside the mansion, Sophie moved with purpose, pushing her cleaning cart laden with supplies and carefully concealed hacking equipment. She'd memorized the layout Ethan had provided, knowing she had precious little time to access Madison's private study and safe. As she climbed the grand staircase, the sound of voices drifted from the direction of the master bedroom. Ethan's voice, warm and casual, mingled with Madison's lighter tones. Sophie's stomach churned at the thought of Ethan having to play nice with the woman who had plotted his murder, but she pushed the feeling aside. They both had roles to play in this dangerous game. Reaching the second floor, Sophie made a beeline for Madison's study. The heavy oak door loomed before her, its ornate handle gleaming in the soft morning light. With shaking hands, she retrieved the electronic lockpick from her cart and set to work. Seconds ticked by like hours as Sophie worked on the lock, her ears straining for any sound of approach. Finally, with a soft click, the door swung open. Sophie quickly slipped inside, closing the door behind her. The study was a vision of opulence, all rich mahogany and leather-bound books. Sophie's eyes immediately fell on the sleek computer sitting on the massive desk. This was it, their best chance at finding the evidence they needed. Working quickly, Sophie booted up the computer and plugged in the specialized USB drive Ethan's team had provided. Lines of code flashed across the screen as the drive bypassed Madison's security measures and began copying files. As the download progressed, Sophie turned her attention to the safe hidden behind a large oil painting. Using the information Ethan had provided about Madison's habits, she input a series of numbers: Madison's birthday, the day she and Ethan met, and the date of a significant business merger. With a satisfying click, the safe swung open. Inside, Sophie found a treasure trove of documents, financial records, letters, and what looked like blackmail material on several prominent figures. Her hands trembled as she photographed each document with the high-resolution camera disguised as a pen. Suddenly, a noise from the hallway made Sophie freeze. Footsteps were approaching, accompanied by Madison's voice growing louder. "I'm sure I left those contracts in my study, darling. It'll just take a moment." Panic surged through Sophie as she scrambled to replace the documents and close the safe. The computer was still downloading files. She couldn't leave it, but there was nowhere to hide. In a split-second decision, Sophie dove behind the heavy floor-to-ceiling curtains, praying that Madison wouldn't notice the slight bulge they now created. She had barely steadied her breathing when the door opened. "Here we are!" Madison's voice rang out, heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "I knew I'd left them in here." Sophie's heart pounded so loudly she was sure Madison would hear it. Through a tiny gap in the curtains, she could see Madison rifling through papers on her desk, oblivious to the computer's soft whirring or the intruder hiding mere feet away. "Madison!" Ethan's voice called from the hallway. "The car's here. We don't want to be late for the charity brunch." "Coming, darling," Madison called back. Sophie heard the rustle of papers being gathered, then the click of heels moving towards the door. "Let me just shut down my computer." Sophie's breath caught in her throat. If Madison noticed the download in progress, everything would be ruined. But luck was on their side. Madison merely tapped a key, putting the computer to sleep rather than shutting it down completely. With a final glance around the room, she left, closing the door behind her. Sophie waited a full minute, ears straining for any sound of return before emerging from her hiding spot. Her legs shook as she crossed to the computer, relief washing over her as she saw the download had completed. She quickly removed the USB drive and returned the computer to its exact state before Madison had entered. With trembling hands, Sophie gathered her cleaning supplies and slipped out of the study. She forced herself to move at a measured pace as she made her way through the house and out to her waiting car, every nerve on high alert for any sign that she'd been discovered. It wasn't until she was several blocks away that Sophie finally allowed herself to breathe normally. She had done it. Against all odds, she had infiltrated Madison's private sanctum and emerged with what they hoped would be damning evidence. As she drove to the rendezvous point where Ethan would meet her later, Sophie's mind raced with the implications of what she'd found. The documents in the safe, the files on the computer, they held the potential to bring down not just Madison and the Callahans, but an entire network of corruption that reached to the highest levels of power. Sophie thought of her father, of the risks he had taken to uncover this conspiracy. She thought of Ethan, still playing his part in this dangerous charade. And she thought of herself, how far she had come from the maid who had simply overheard a conversation to the woman now, at the center of unraveling a web of deceit that spanned decades. As she pulled into the parking garage, where she would switch cars to throw off any potential tails, Sophie allowed herself a small moment of pride. She had faced her fears, stepped into a world so far removed from her own, and emerged victorious. But she knew the battle was far from over. What they had uncovered would make them targets of some of the most powerful and dangerous people in the country. The road ahead would be fraught with peril, testing their resolve, their ingenuity, and their trust in each other. As Sophie settled into the nondescript sedan that would take her to the safe house, she steeled herself for what was to come. They had the evidence. Now they had to use it. The final act of this high-stakes drama was about to unfold, and Sophie Martinez was ready to see it through to the end, whatever the cost. Little did she know that the information she had risked everything to obtain would lead to revelations more shocking and far-reaching than she could have ever imagined. The game was changing, the stakes rising, and Sophie was about to find herself at the very heart of a storm that threatened to upend the foundations of power in New York and beyond. The stage was set for a showdown that would test not just Sophie's courage and determination, but also her faith in justice and her understanding of right and wrong. As she drove through the bustling streets of New York, Sophie Martinez prepared herself for the challenges that lay ahead, knowing that the next few days would determine not just her fate, but the fate of all those touched by the Callahan's web of corruption. The final battle was about to begin, and Sophie was ready to fight with everything she had. The safe house hummed with tension as Sophie and Ethan pored over the evidence they had gathered. The USB drive from Madison's computer and the photographs of the documents from her safe had yielded a treasure trove of information, each revelation more shocking than the last. "My God," Ethan breathed, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "The depth of this corruption. It's staggering," Sophie nodded, her eyes never leaving the screen where financial records scrolled past. "It's not just the Callahans," she said, her voice tight with anger and disbelief. "There are politicians, judges, even law enforcement officials implicated in this." As they delved deeper into the files, a clear picture began to emerge. The Callahan family had spent decades building a network of influence that reached into every corner of power in New York and beyond. Bribes, blackmail, and even murder had been used to maintain their grip on power and ensure their illegal activities went unchecked. "Look at this," Sophie said, pointing to a particular document. "There's a list of offshore accounts here, just like my father mentioned in his letter. But these names, Ethan, some of these are your board members." Ethan's face hardened as he scanned the list. "I knew some of them were in Madison's pocket, but this goes beyond anything I imagined." As the afternoon wore on, they pieced together the full extent of the conspiracy. The Callahan empire was built on a foundation of drugs, money laundering, and human trafficking, all hidden behind a veneer of legitimate business and philanthropic endeavors. "No, we need to take this to the authorities," Sophie said, her voice filled with determination. "With this evidence, we can bring down the entire network." Ethan nodded slowly, his expression grave. "You're right, but we need to be careful. If we move too quickly, they might find a way to cover their tracks or worse, come after us." Just then, Ethan's secure phone buzzed with an incoming message. His face paled as he read it. "It's from Madison," he said, his voice tight. "She wants me to come home immediately, says it's urgent." Sophie's heart raced. "Do you think she suspects something?" "I don't know," Ethan replied, already moving to gather his things. "But I can't ignore it without raising suspicion. I have to go." Sophie stood, her eyes filled with concern. "Ethan, it could be a trap. What if she knows about the break-in?" Ethan paused, turning to face Sophie. "But that's a risk we have to take. If I don't go, it could tip her off that we're onto her. I need you to stay here and continue going through the evidence. If anything happens to me, you'll be our last hope of exposing the truth." Sophie wanted to argue, to insist on going with him, but she knew he was right. They couldn't risk losing everything they had worked for. "Be careful," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. Ethan's expression softened, and for a moment, the facade of the powerful businessman fell away, revealing the vulnerable man beneath. "I will," he promised. "And Sophie, thank you for everything." With that, he was gone, leaving Sophie alone with the weight of their discoveries pressing down on her. Hours passed as Sophie continued to sift through the mountain of evidence. Her eyes burned from staring at the screen, but she couldn't bring herself to stop. Every new piece of information felt crucial, another nail in the coffin of the Callahan Empire. As night fell, Sophie's worry for Ethan grew. He hadn't made contact since leaving, and her imagination ran wild with worst-case scenarios. Just as she was about to call his secure line, a loud bang echoed through the safe house. Sophie jumped to her feet, her heart pounding. The sound came again. Someone was trying to break down the door. Panic surged through her as she quickly gathered the most important documents and the USB drive. She had just managed to shove them into a hidden compartment when the door burst open. Two men in dark suits entered, their expressions grim and determined. Behind them, to Sophie's shock and horror, stood Madison Wilson. "Well, well," Madison said, her voice dripping with cold amusement. "What have we here?" "A little bird told me you've been poking your nose where it doesn't belong, Sophie dear." Sophie's mind raced. How had they found her? Where was Ethan? "Mrs. Wilson," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just—" "Save it," Madison snapped, her blue eyes flashing with anger. "We know you broke into my study. We know you've been working with Ethan to undermine me. Did you really think you could outsmart me? You pathetic little maid?" Sophie's fear began to give way to anger. "Where's Ethan?" she demanded. "What have you done to him?" A cold smile spread across Madison's face. "Oh, don't worry about Ethan. He's indisposed at the moment, but you should be more concerned about yourself right now." As Madison spoke, the two men began to move towards Sophie. She backed away, her eyes darting around the room for any means of escape, but she knew she was trapped. "You won't get away with this," Sophie said, her voice stronger now. "We have evidence of everything, the money laundering, the bribes, even the murders. It's over, Madison." For a moment, a flicker of uncertainty passed over Madison's face, but it was quickly replaced by a look of steely resolve. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, little girl. The Callahan family has weathered worse storms than you. We'll bury you, just like we buried your meddling father." The mention of her father ignited a fire in Sophie's chest. "You killed him," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "All because he was trying to expose your corruption." Madison laughed, a harsh, mirthless sound. "Your father was a fool who didn't know when to quit, just like you. And now you'll share his fate." As the men closed in on Sophie, a commotion erupted from the hallway. Shouts and the sound of running feet echoed through the safe house. Suddenly, the door burst open again, and a team of police officers flooded in, led by none other than Detective Martinez. "NYPD! Everybody freeze!" Martinez shouted, his gun drawn and pointed at Madison. The scene descended into chaos. Madison's men were quickly subdued, while Madison herself stood in shock, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. As an officer handcuffed Madison, Sophie saw a familiar figure enter the room. Ethan, looking disheveled but very much alive, rushed to her side. "Sophie, are you all right?" he asked, his eyes filled with concern. Sophie nodded, relief washing over her. "I'm fine. But how? What happened?" Ethan's expression was grim but satisfied. "I suspected Madison might make a move, so I contacted Detective Martinez before I left. We set up a sting operation. When Madison tried to have me taken care of, we had all the evidence we needed to move in." As Madison was led away, her icy composure finally cracking, she turned to glare at Sophie and Ethan. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You have no idea how deep this goes. You'll never be safe." But her threats fell on deaf ears. Sophie and Ethan watched as the woman who had caused so much pain and destruction was finally brought to justice. In the aftermath of the raid, as police officers swarmed the safe house collecting evidence, Sophie and Ethan found a quiet moment alone. "It's really over," Sophie said, her voice filled with wonder and exhaustion. Ethan nodded, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Thanks to you, Sophie. Your bravery, your determination. You've done more than just save my life. You've brought down an entire criminal empire." Sophie thought of her father, of the sacrifice he had made in pursuit of the truth. "We finished what he started," she said softly, tears pricking at her eyes. As the night wore on and the initial chaos of the raid settled, Sophie found herself reflecting on the incredible journey that had brought her to this point. From a hotel maid who had overheard a dangerous conversation to a key player in bringing down one of the most powerful criminal organizations in New York, it all seemed surreal. But as she watched the police methodically gathering the evidence she and Ethan had risked everything to obtain, Sophie knew that their fight wasn't over. Madison's words echoed in her mind. You have no idea how deep this goes. There were still powerful people out there, people implicated in the Callahans' web of corruption, people who would stop at nothing to keep their secrets buried. As dawn broke over the city, casting a golden glow over the safe house, Sophie made a silent vow. She would see this through to the end, no matter what challenges lay ahead. For her father, for justice, and for all those who had suffered at the hands of the corrupt. The game had changed, but Sophie Martinez was ready to play her part in the next chapter of this unfolding drama. Little did she know that the revelations of the past few days were just the beginning of a journey that would test her resolve, her courage, and her very understanding of justice in ways she could never have imagined. The days following Madison's arrest were a whirlwind of activity. Sophie found herself thrust into the center of a storm of legal proceedings, press conferences, and clandestine meetings with law enforcement officials. The evidence she and Ethan had uncovered had opened a Pandora's box of corruption, implicating dozens of high-ranking officials and business leaders. As Sophie sat in yet another debriefing session with Detective Martinez and a team of FBI agents, she couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they had uncovered. Ms. Martinez, Agent Sarah Collins, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, began, "We can't thank you enough for your bravery in bringing this to light. The Callahan case is shaping up to be one of the largest corruption scandals in New York history." Sophie nodded, her mind racing with the implications. "I'm glad we could help, but I can't shake the feeling that this is far from over." Madison's words keep echoing in my head about how deep this goes. Detective Martinez leaned forward, his expression grave. "You're right to be concerned, Sophie. We've only scratched the surface of this conspiracy. There are powerful people out there who will stop at nothing to keep their involvement hidden." As if on cue, Agent Collins' phone buzzed. Her face paled as she read the message. "We've got a problem," she announced to the room. "Judge Harriman just threw out the search warrant for the Callahan estate. He's claiming procedural errors." A collective groan went up from the assembled law enforcement officers. Sophie's heart sank. Judge Harriman was one of the names they had uncovered in Madison's files. Clearly, the corrupt network was already mobilizing to protect its own. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," Ethan said, speaking up for the first time. He had been a constant presence at Sophie's side throughout the proceedings, lending his business acumen and resources to the investigation. But they're going to use every legal loophole and corrupt connection they have to obstruct this case. Sophie felt a surge of determination. They had come too far, risked too much, to let this all fall apart now. "There has to be something we can do," she insisted, "some way to outmaneuver them." Agent Collins exchanged a look with Detective Martinez. "There might be," she said slowly, but it's risky, and it would require both of you to go above and beyond what you've already done. Whatever it takes," Sophie and Ethan said, almost in unison. Agent Collins nodded, a hint of a smile playing at her lips. "We have reason to believe that Ryan, Madison's accomplice, might be willing to turn state's evidence. He's been spooked by the arrests and is worried he'll be the fall guy for the whole operation. But," Detective Martinez continued, "he's refusing to talk to law enforcement directly. He's paranoid about leaks within the department, and given what we've uncovered, he's not entirely wrong to be cautious." Sophie's mind raced, already seeing where this was going. "You want us to talk to him," she said. It wasn't a question. Agent Collins nodded. "You two are the wild cards in this situation. You're not law enforcement. You're not part of the Callahan organization. You might be the only people Ryan will trust right now." Ethan frowned, concern etched on his face. "It's incredibly dangerous." If the Callahans get wind of this meeting, we'll take every precaution, Detective Martinez assured them. But ultimately, the decision is yours. We can't force you to do this. Sophie turned to Ethan, seeing the conflict in his eyes. She knew he was worried about her safety, about the risks they'd already taken. But she also saw the determination there, the same fire that burned in her own heart. We have to do this, she said softly, for my father, for justice, for everyone who's suffered because of the Callahans' greed. Ethan held her gaze for a long moment before nodding. You're right, he said, squeezing her hand. We're in this together until the end. The next 48 hours were a blur of preparation and nervous anticipation. Sophie and Ethan were briefed on every possible scenario, equipped with hidden recording devices, and given a crash course in negotiation tactics. As they sat in a nondescript sedan, parked in the shadows of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, Sophie felt her heart racing. This was it, their chance to blow the case wide open, to secure the testimony that could bring down the entire corrupt network. Are you ready for this? Ethan asked, his voice low and tense. Sophie took a deep breath, centering herself. She thought of her father, of the risks he had taken in pursuit of the truth. She thought of all the lives destroyed by the Callahans, greed and corruption. I'm ready, she said, her voice steady and determined. They exited the car, moving silently towards the warehouse entrance. The plan was simple: meet Ryan, convince him to turn state's evidence, and get out safely. But as they pushed open the heavy metal door, Sophie couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get much more complicated. The interior of the warehouse was dimly lit, shadows dancing in the corners. Ryan stood in the center of the open space, his face pale and drawn, eyes darting nervously around the room. You came, he said, his voice hoarse. I wasn't sure you would. We're here to help you, Ryan, Sophie said, keeping her voice calm and reassuring. We know you're in a difficult position, but we can protect you if you're willing to testify. Ryan's laugh was bitter and hollow. Protect me? You have no idea what you're dealing with. The Callahans. They have reach you can't even imagine. We know more than you think, Ethan countered. We've seen the files, the offshore accounts, the evidence of decades of corruption, but we need your testimony to tie it all together. For a moment, hope flared in Ryan's eyes, but then fear took over once more. You don't understand, he said, his voice trembling. It's not just the Callahans. There are others, powerful people who... His words were cut off by the sudden screech of tires outside the warehouse. Sophie's heart leapt into her throat as she heard car doors slamming, footsteps approaching rapidly. It's a trap, Ryan whispered, panic etched on his face. They must have followed me. We have to get out of here. Sophie and Ethan exchanged a quick glance, their minds racing. They had prepared for many scenarios, but not this. As the sound of approaching footsteps grew louder, they knew they had only moments to act. The back exit, Ethan hissed, already moving. Quick! They raced through the warehouse, weaving between stacks of old crates and rusting machinery. Sophie's lungs burned as she ran, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Behind them, she could hear shouts and the ominous sound of a door being forced open. They burst out of the rear exit into the cool night air, only to find their path blocked by two menacing figures. Sophie's heart sank as she recognized one of them. It was the same man who had confronted them at the bank vault. Well, well, the man sneered. Looks like we've caught ourselves some rats. Sophie felt Ethan tense beside her, ready to fight. But before anyone could make a move, the night was suddenly illuminated by flashing red and blue lights. Police sirens wailed as several patrol cars screeched to a halt around them. NYPD, freeze! Detective Martinez's voice boomed through a megaphone. In the chaos that followed, Sophie found herself being pulled to safety by Agent Collins. As she watched the Callahan thugs being handcuffed and led away, relief washed over her. They had made it out alive, and more importantly, they had Ryan, their key witness. As the adrenaline of the moment began to fade, Sophie realized that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in their fight against corruption. Ryan's testimony would be crucial, but it would also make them all targets of a network far more vast and dangerous than they had initially imagined. Looking at Ethan, who was giving his statement to Detective Martinez, Sophie felt a mix of fear and determination. They had come so far, risked so much. There was no turning back now. As dawn broke over the city, casting a golden glow over the scene of their narrow escape, Sophie Martinez steeled herself for the battles to come. The game had changed once again, the stakes higher than ever, but she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, armed with the truth and the unwavering support of her unlikely allies. Little did she know that the events of that night would set in motion a chain of revelations that would shake the very foundations of power in New York and beyond. The fight against corruption was far from over, and Sophie Martinez was now at the very heart of a storm that threatened to change everything. The safe house buzzed with nervous energy as Sophie, Ethan, and Ryan huddled around a table strewn with documents and laptops. The events of the previous night had left them all shaken, but also more determined than ever to see this through to the end. Ryan, his face pale and drawn from lack of sleep, leaned forward intently. "I'll tell you everything I know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But you have to understand, what I'm about to reveal goes far beyond the Callahans. We're talking about a network of corruption that reaches the highest levels of government and business." Sophie felt a chill run down her spine. She exchanged a glance with Ethan, seeing her own mix of anticipation and dread mirrored in his eyes. "We're listening, Ryan," Ethan said, his voice steady and reassuring. "Take your time and start from the beginning." Ryan took a deep breath, steeling himself. "It all started about 5 years ago," he began. "I was a low-level accountant at Callahan Industries, just trying to make ends meet. That's when I first noticed some irregularities in the books." As Ryan spoke, a picture began to emerge of a vast and intricate web of corruption. The Callahans, it turned out, were just one node in a network that spanned continents and industries. There were politicians who accepted bribes to push through favorable legislation, judges who dismissed cases against key players, and business leaders who turned a blind eye to illegal activities in exchange for a cut of the profits. "But the real power," Ryan continued, his voice dropping even lower, "lies with a group they call the Circle. They're the ones pulling all the strings, orchestrating everything from the shadows." Sophie leaned forward, her heart racing. Do you know who's in this circle?" Ryan shook his head. "No one knows for sure. They operate with absolute secrecy. But I've heard names whispered, senators, CEOs, even a Supreme Court justice." The implications were staggering. Sophie's mind reeled as she tried to process the scope of what they were dealing with. This was no longer just about bringing down the Callahans or saving Ethan's life. They were up against a system of corruption so vast and deeply entrenched that it seemed almost insurmountable. "Why are you telling us this now?" Ethan asked, his brow furrowed. "Why take the risk?" Ryan's laugh was bitter and hollow. "Because I'm a dead man walking," he said. "The moment Madison was arrested, I knew it was only a matter of time before they came for me. I'm the loose end, the one who knows too much. At least this way, maybe my death will mean something." Sophie felt a surge of sympathy for Ryan. Despite his involvement in Madison's schemes, he was ultimately just another victim of this corrupt system. "We'll protect you," she said firmly. "Your testimony is crucial. With what you know, we can bring this whole network crashing down." Ryan's smile was sad and knowing. "You don't understand," he said softly. "There's nowhere to hide from these people. They have eyes and ears everywhere." As if to underscore his point, a loud bang suddenly echoed through the safe house. Sophie's heart leapt into her throat as she heard the sound of splintering wood and shouting voices. "They've found us," Ethan said, his voice tight with tension. "We need to move now." What followed was a blur of frantic activity. Sophie grabbed the most crucial documents and shoved them into a bag, while Ethan hustled Ryan towards a hidden exit in the back of the safe house. They could hear heavy footsteps approaching, the voices of their pursuers growing louder by the second. As they slipped out into the cool night air, Sophie's mind raced. How had they been found? The safe house was supposed to be secure, known only to a select few within law enforcement. "There must be a leak," Ethan said, echoing her thoughts as they hurried down a narrow alley. Someone on the inside tipped them off. The realization sent a chill through Sophie. If there were traitors within law enforcement, who could they trust? They made their way through the city's back streets, constantly looking over their shoulders for signs of pursuit. Ryan was struggling to keep up, his face pale and sweating. I can't go on," he gasped, leaning against a wall. "You two go, save yourselves." Sophie shook her head firmly. "We're not leaving you behind," she insisted. "We're in this together now." Ethan nodded in agreement, already scanning the area for options. His eyes lit up as he spotted something. "There," he said, pointing to a nondescript door half hidden behind a dumpster. "It's one of my company's old storage facilities. We should be safe there at least for a while." They made their way inside, Sophie and Ethan supporting Ryan between them. The interior was dusty and filled with old office furniture, but it would serve as a temporary haven. As they caught their breath, the gravity of their situation began to sink in. They were fugitives now, hunted by both corrupt law enforcement and the criminal network they were trying to expose. "Oh, what do we do now?" Sophie asked, her voice small in the cavernous space. Ethan's expression was grim but determined. "We fight back," he said firmly. "We use the evidence we have, Ryan's testimony, and we take this story public. It's our only chance." Ryan looked up, fear and hope warring in his eyes. "You really think we can win against these people?" Sophie thought of her father, of his unwavering commitment to justice. She thought of all the lives destroyed by this corrupt network, of the future that hung in the balance. "We have to try," she said, her voice growing stronger, "for everyone who suffered because of their greed and corruption, for the truth." As they began to plan their next move, Sophie couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The choices they made in the coming days would have far-reaching consequences, not just for them, but for the entire country. Little did they know that their decision to fight back would set in motion a chain of events that would shake the foundations of power to their very core. The game had changed once again, and Sophie Martinez found herself at the center of a storm that threatened to reshape the very fabric of society. As dawn broke over the city, casting long shadows through the dusty windows of their makeshift hideout, Sophie, Ethan, and Ryan steeled themselves for the battles to come. They were David facing Goliath, armed with nothing but the truth and their unwavering determination to see justice done. The road ahead would be fraught with danger, filled with unexpected allies and devastating betrayals. But for now, in the quiet of the early morning, they allowed themselves a moment of hope. They had each other, they had the truth on their side, and they were ready to fight with everything they had. The final act of this high-stakes drama was about to begin, and Sophie Martinez was prepared to play her part to the very end, no matter the cost. The old storage facility had become their war room, a cluttered space filled with the constant hum of laptops and the rustle of papers. Sophie, Ethan, and Ryan had been working tirelessly for days, piecing together the vast puzzle of corruption they had uncovered. Sophie stood before a large whiteboard, her eyes scanning the complex web of names, companies, and connections they had mapped out. At the center was the Circle, the shadowy group Ryan had mentioned, surrounded by a network that seemed to touch every aspect of power in the city and beyond. "It's overwhelming," she murmured, her voice tinged with a mix of awe and dread. "How do we even begin to take down something this massive?" Ethan looked up from his laptop, his face etched with determination despite the dark circles under his eyes. "We start with what we know for certain," he said. "We have solid evidence on the Callahans, and with Ryan's testimony, we can start to connect the dots to some of the other players." Ryan, who had been poring over financial records, nodded in agreement. "The key is to follow the money," he added. These offshore accounts I've uncovered, they're the lifeblood of the entire operation. If we can trace these transactions, we can expose the whole network. Sophie felt a surge of hope. They had made progress, but she knew they were still walking a dangerous path. We need to be careful, she cautioned. The moment we start making moves, they'll come after us with everything they've got. As if on cue, Ethan's secure phone buzzed with an incoming message. His brow furrowed as he read it. "It's from Detective Martinez," he said, his voice tight. "He says there's been a development. He wants to meet." Sophie and Ryan exchanged worried glances. After the betrayal at the safe house, they had been hesitant to trust anyone in law enforcement, but Martinez had proven himself an ally so far. "What do you think?" Sophie asked, turning to Ethan. "Could it be another trap?" Ethan was quiet for a moment, weighing their options. "It's a risk," he admitted, "but Martinez has stuck his neck out for us before. If he says it's important, we need to hear him out." The decision made, they began to prepare for the meeting. Sophie couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled in her stomach. They were about to step out of their temporary sanctuary and back into a world where danger lurked around every corner. As they made their way through the city, taking a circuitous route to avoid detection, Sophie found herself reflecting on how much her life had changed in such a short time. Just weeks ago, she had been a hotel maid, struggling to make ends meet. Now, she was at the center of what could be the biggest corruption scandal in New York history. The meeting point Martinez had chosen was a small, nondescript diner on the outskirts of the city. As they entered, Sophie's eyes scanned the sparse crowd, her nerves on high alert. She spotted Martinez in a corner booth, his face grim. "Sir, thank you for coming," he said, as they slid into the seats across from him. "I wouldn't have asked if it wasn't crucial." Ethan leaned forward, his voice low. "What's going on, Detective? Have there been new developments in the case?" Martinez's expression darkened. "You could say that," he replied. "There's been a leak. Someone high up in the department has been feeding information to the Circle. They know about Ryan's testimony, and they're moving to discredit him before we can bring the case to trial." Sophie felt her heart sink. They had known this might happen, but the reality of it was still a bitter pill to swallow. "How bad is it?" she asked. "Bad," Martinez admitted. "They're painting Ryan as a disgruntled employee with a grudge, claiming he fabricated evidence to bring down the Callahans. They've even produced documents that seem to implicate him in some of the very crimes he's testifying about." Ryan's face had gone pale. "That's impossible," he whispered. I wouldn't." Ethan placed a reassuring hand on Ryan's shoulder. "We know," he said firmly. "This is their playbook. They're trying to muddy the waters, create doubt. We can't let them succeed." Sophie's mind was racing. "There has to be a way to counter this," she said, her voice filled with determination. "Ryan, is there anything in your records that could definitively prove your innocence? Something they couldn't have fabricated?" Ryan was quiet for a moment, his brow furrowed in concentration. Then, suddenly, his eyes lit up. "The backup server," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "In the old Callahan Industries building. I used to make copies of all the incriminating documents I found, just in case. If we could access that server, we'd have irrefutable proof," Ethan finished, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Martinez nodded slowly. "It's risky," he cautioned. "That building will be heavily guarded, especially now. But if you could get that evidence, it would blow this case wide open." As they began to hash out the details of a plan, Sophie felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was it, their chance to turn the tables on the Circle, to expose the truth once and for all. But the stakes had never been higher, and she knew that one wrong move could spell disaster for all of them. The next few hours were a whirlwind of preparation. Ethan used his connections to obtain blueprints of the Callahan Industries building, while Ryan worked on bypassing the security systems remotely. Sophie pored over every detail, looking for any potential pitfalls in their plan. As night fell, they gathered one last time to go over the operation. The tension in the room was palpable, each of them acutely aware of the dangers that lay ahead. "Remember," Ethan said, his voice steady and reassuring, "we're not just doing this for ourselves. We're doing it for every person who's ever been victimized by this corrupt system. For your father, Sophie. For justice." Sophie nodded, feeling a surge of determination. She thought of her father, of the sacrifices he had made in pursuit of the truth. She thought of all the lives destroyed by the greed and corruption of the Circle. This was their chance to make it right. As they prepared to leave, Sophie caught her reflection in a dusty mirror. The woman staring back at her was a far cry from the timid maid she had once been. There was a fire in her eyes, a strength in her bearing that spoke of the trials she had faced and overcome. "We can do this," she said softly, more to herself than to the others. "We have to." With one last shared look of determination, they stepped out into the night, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The final battle was about to begin, and Sophie Martinez was prepared to see it through to the end, no matter the cost. Little did they know that the events about to unfold would not only test their courage and resolve, but would also uncover secrets that would shake the very foundations of power in New York and beyond. The game was reaching its climax, and Sophie was about to play the most crucial role of her life in exposing the truth and bringing down the Circle. As they made their way through the dark streets of New York, Sophie couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the precipice of something monumental. Whatever happened in the coming hours would change everything, not just for them, but for the entire city. The weight of that responsibility pressed down on her, but it also fueled her determination. They were David facing Goliath, armed with nothing but the truth and their unwavering commitment to justice. And as they approached the looming silhouette of the Callahan Industries building, Sophie Martinez steeled herself for the battle ahead, ready to fight with everything she had for the truth her father had died protecting. The final act of this high-stakes drama was about to unfold, and Sophie was prepared to see it through to the very end, no matter what it might cost her. The Callahan Industries building loomed before them, a gleaming monolith of glass and steel that seemed to touch the very sky. Sophie's heart raced as she, Ethan and Ryan huddled in the shadows of a nearby alley, going over their plan one last time. "Remember," Ethan whispered, his voice tense but steady, "we have a small window of opportunity. The security shift change happens at 2 a.m. That's our best chance to slip in unnoticed." Ryan nodded, his fingers flying over the tablet in his hands. "I've managed to loop the security camera feeds on the lower levels," he said. "But once we reach the 30th floor, we're flying blind. The backup server room has its own isolated security system." Sophie took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. "We can do this," she said, as much to convince herself as the others. "Dave, we have to." As the clock struck 2 a.m., they made their move. Using the employee access card Ryan had managed to clone, they slipped into the building through a side entrance. The lobby was eerily quiet, their footsteps echoing softly on the polished marble floor. They made their way to the service elevator, hearts pounding with each passing moment. As the elevator began its ascent, Sophie couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought her to this point. From a simple maid who had overheard a dangerous conversation to a key player in unraveling a web of corruption that spanned decades, it all seemed surreal. The elevator dinged softly as they reached the 30th floor. As they stepped out, the gravity of their situation hit Sophie anew. They were deep in enemy territory now, with no backup and no easy way out if things went wrong. Ryan led the way, navigating the maze-like corridors with the familiarity of someone who had spent years working in the building. As they approached the server room, he held up a hand, signaling them to stop. "The security system here is state-of-the-art," he whispered. "Retinal scanners, biometric locks, the works. But I think I can bypass it. I just need a few minutes." As Ryan worked on the security panel, Sophie and Ethan kept watch, every shadow and sound making them jump. The minutes ticked by agonizingly slowly, each second feeling like an eternity. Finally, with a soft beep, the door to the server room slid open. They rushed inside, the cool air and soft hum of machinery washing over them. "We don't have much time," Ethan said, his voice urgent. "Ryan, find what we need. Sophie and I will keep watch." Ryan nodded, moving quickly to one of the terminals. His fingers flew over the keyboard, navigating through layers of encryption and security protocols. Sophie watched in amazement, marveling at the skills Ryan had kept hidden during his years as Madison's accomplice. Suddenly, Ryan's face lit up. "I've got it," he said, his voice filled with a mixture of relief and excitement. "Everything's here. The financial records, the emails, even recordings of meetings. It's all the proof we need to bring down the circle." As Ryan began downloading the files onto a secure drive, Sophie felt a wave of emotions wash over her. They were so close to achieving what her father had died for, to exposing the truth and bringing justice to those who had thought themselves above the law. But their moment of triumph was short-lived. Just as the download was nearing completion, an alarm blared through the building, red lights flashing ominously. "They've detected the breach," Ethan said, his voice tight with tension. "We need to move now." Ryan grabbed the drive, shoving it into his pocket as they raced out of the server room. The sound of heavy footsteps and shouting voices echoed through the corridors, growing louder with each passing second. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a group of security guards, their weapons drawn. "Freeze!" one of them shouted. "Don't move!" Time seemed to stand still as Sophie's mind raced, searching for a way out. Then, in a burst of inspiration, she remembered something from her days working at the hotel, the laundry chute. "This way!" she yelled, grabbing Ethan and Ryan and pulling them towards a small door in the wall. Before the guards could react, they had tumbled into the chute, the world spinning around them as they slid down floor after floor. They landed in a heap of dirty linens in the basement laundry room, bruised and disoriented, but alive. The sound of alarms and shouting voices from above spurred them into action. "The loading dock," Ethan gasped as they scrambled to their feet. "If we can make it there, we might have a chance." They raced through the basement, the sounds of pursuit growing ever closer. As they burst out onto the loading dock, they were met with the welcome sight of Detective Martinez's car, engine running. "Get in!" Martinez shouted, throwing open the doors. They didn't need to be told twice. As soon as they were inside, Martinez floored the accelerator, tires screeching as they sped away from the Callahan building. As the adrenaline of their escape began to fade, the reality of what they had accomplished started to sink in. They had done it. They had the evidence they needed to bring down the circle and expose the corruption that had plagued the city for so long. "We did it," Sophie breathed, her voice filled with wonder and exhaustion. "We actually did it." Ethan squeezed her hand, a mixture of pride and relief on his face. "Thanks to you, Sophie. Your quick thinking saved us back there." Ryan, still clutching the precious drive, nodded in agreement. "We're not out of the woods yet," he cautioned. "The circle will come at us with everything they've got now, but with this evidence, we have a real chance." As they sped through the pre-dawn streets of New York, Sophie's mind was already racing ahead to the next steps. They would need to get the evidence to the right people, those they could trust to act on it without being compromised by the circle's influence. But for now, as the first rays of sunlight began to peek over the horizon, Sophie allowed herself a moment of hope. They had struck a major blow against the corruption that had taken her father's life and threatened to destroy so many others. The road ahead would still be fraught with danger and challenges. The circle would not go down without a fight, and there were still powerful forces arrayed against them. But in that moment, as the city awakened around them, Sophie Martinez felt a sense of purpose and determination stronger than anything she had ever experienced. They had taken the first step towards justice, towards exposing the truth her father had died protecting, and Sophie was ready to see it through to the end, no matter what obstacles lay ahead. As Detective Martinez's car wound its way through the awakening city, Sophie looked out at the familiar skyline, seeing it with new eyes. This was her city, and she had just played a crucial role in potentially saving it from the corruption that had threatened to consume it. The game had changed, the stakes higher than ever, but Sophie Martinez was no longer just a pawn in someone else's machinations. She was a key player now, armed with the truth and an unwavering determination to see justice done. The final battle was yet to come, but Sophie was ready. Ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, ready to honor her father's memory, and ready to fight for the truth with everything she had. As the sun rose over New York City, casting a golden glow over the streets, Sophie Martinez steeled herself for the battles to come. The journey that had begun with an overheard conversation in a hotel room was far from over, but she was prepared to see it through to the very end. Little did she know that the evidence they had risked everything to obtain would lead to revelations more shocking and far-reaching than any of them could have imagined. The stage was set for a final confrontation that would shake the very foundations of power in New York and beyond, and Sophie Martinez was ready to play her part in exposing the truth, no matter the cost. The safe house hummed with nervous energy as Sophie, Ethan, Ryan, and Detective Martinez pored over the explosive evidence they had retrieved from the Callahan Industries building. The scope of the corruption they were uncovering was staggering, reaching into every corner of power in New York and beyond. "My God," Martinez breathed, his eyes wide as he scrolled through the files. Judges, politicians, business leaders, the circle has its tentacles in everything. Sophie nodded grimly, her mind racing as she connected the dots. "This goes beyond just the Callahans," she said. "It's an entire system designed to keep power and wealth in the hands of a select few, at the expense of everyone else." Ethan, who had been making calls to trusted contacts in the media and law enforcement, joined them at the table. "I've arranged for a press conference tomorrow morning," he said, his voice tight with tension. "We're going to lay it all out for the public. Once this information is out there, the circle won't be able to sweep it under the rug." Ryan, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, spoke up. "They're not going to let this happen without a fight," he warned. "We need to be prepared for anything." As if on cue, Martinez's phone buzzed with an incoming message. His face paled as he read it. "We've got a problem," he said, his voice grim. "My source in the department just sent word. The circle is making its move. They're issuing warrants for our arrests on trumped-up charges. They're trying to discredit us before we can go public." Sophie felt a chill run down her spine. They had known the circle would fight back, but the speed and ferocity of their response was alarming. "What do we do?" she asked, looking around at her companions, Ethan's jaw set in determination. "We stick to the plan," he said firmly. "We go public with everything we have. It's our only chance to get ahead of their narrative." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity as they prepared for the press conference. Sophie worked on crafting a statement that would lay out the evidence clearly and compellingly, while Ethan coordinated with his media contacts to ensure maximum coverage. Ryan and Martinez focused on securing their digital evidence and creating backups in case the circle managed to interfere with their primary files. As dawn broke over the city, Sophie stood by the window, watching the streets below come to life. In just a few hours, they would step out into the public eye and potentially change the course of history. The weight of that responsibility pressed down on her, but it also fueled her determination. "Are you ready for this?" Ethan asked softly, coming to stand beside her. Sophie took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied. This is what my father died for, what we've all been fighting for. We can't back down now." Ethan nodded, a mix of pride and concern in his eyes. "Whatever happens out there today," he said, "I want you to know that you're one of the bravest people I've ever met, Sophie. Your father would be proud." Sophie felt a lump form in her throat at the mention of her father. She thought of how far she had come from the day she overheard Madison's plot in that hotel room. From a maid struggling to make ends meet to a key player in exposing one of the biggest corruption scandals in New York history, it was almost too much to comprehend. As they made their final preparations, a sense of nervous anticipation filled the air. They all knew that once they stepped out that door, there was no turning back. The Circle would throw everything they had at them in a desperate attempt to maintain their grip on power. Just as they were about to leave, Ryan's laptop pinged with an incoming message. His face went pale as he read it. "It's from an anonymous source," he said, his voice shaking. "They say they have information about the Circle that could blow this whole thing wide open. They want to meet us before the press conference." Sophie and Ethan exchanged wary glances. "It could be a trap," Ethan cautioned. "Or it could be the final piece of the puzzle we need," Sophie countered. "We can't ignore this." After a heated debate, they decided to split up. Ethan and Martinez would go ahead to the press conference venue to make sure everything was set up and secure. Sophie and Ryan would meet the mysterious informant with strict instructions to abort the meeting at the first sign of trouble. As Sophie and Ryan made their way to the meeting point, a quiet park on the outskirts of the city, Sophie couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something bigger than they could handle. But they had come too far to turn back now. The park was nearly deserted when they arrived, the early morning mist lending an eerie quality to the scene. Sophie's eyes scanned the area, every nerve on high alert. "There," Ryan whispered, nodding towards a figure seated on a bench near the pond. As they approached, Sophie's heart nearly stopped. The person on the bench was none other than Madison Wilson. "Hello, Sophie," Madison said, her voice cool and composed. "I think it's time we had a little chat." Sophie's mind raced as she tried to process this unexpected turn of events. Was this a trap, or had Madison had a change of heart? Why are you here?" Sophie demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. Madison's smile was tired and bitter. "Believe it or not, I'm here to help," she said. "The Circle, they've gone too far. What they're planning, it's beyond anything I ever signed up for." Over the next half hour, Madison laid out a story that left Sophie and Ryan reeling. The Circle, it turned out, was planning something far more sinister than mere corruption and financial crimes. They were on the verge of implementing a plan that would effectively give them control over the city's entire infrastructure, from water and power to law enforcement and government operations. "They call it Project Oversight," Madison explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "Total control, all under the guise of improving efficiency and security. But in reality, it's about consolidating power in a way that's never been done before." Sophie felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the implications. "Why are you telling us this?" she asked, still wary of Madison's motives. Madison's eyes met Sophie's, and for the first time, Sophie saw genuine remorse there. "Because I realized I've been on the wrong side of history," she said softly. "What they're planning, it's wrong. And as much as I hate to admit it, you and Ethan are the only ones who have a chance of stopping them." As Madison handed over a flash drive containing the details of Project Oversight, Sophie's mind was already racing ahead to their next move. This information changed everything. The press conference they had planned suddenly seemed inadequate in the face of this new threat. "We need to get this to Ethan and Martinez," Ryan said urgently. "And we have to change our strategy." Sophie nodded, her resolve hardening. "Madison," she said, turning to the woman who had once been her enemy, "I don't know if I can ever forgive you for what you've done, but thank you for this. It might just save the city." As they rushed back to rejoin Ethan and Martinez, Sophie's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and determination. The stakes had just been raised to unimaginable heights. They weren't just fighting corruption anymore. They were fighting for the very soul of their city. The final confrontation was looming, and Sophie Martinez found herself at the center of a storm that threatened to reshape the very fabric of society. But as daunting as the challenge ahead seemed, Sophie felt a surge of strength coursing through her veins. She thought of her father, of the sacrifice he had made in pursuit of the truth. She thought of Ethan, whose unwavering support had given her the courage to keep fighting, and she thought of all the innocent people whose lives hung in the balance. As they neared the press conference venue, Sophie steeled herself for the battle ahead. The circle had underestimated her once, dismissing her as a mere maid. They wouldn't make that mistake again. Sophie Martinez was ready to fight with everything she had, to expose the truth and save her city from a fate worse than they had ever imagined. The final act of this high-stakes drama was about to unfold, and Sophie was prepared to see it through to the very end, no matter the cost. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.